Talk to Scientists, Food and Mood Disease or FMD, Research, Diagnosis, and Control. Before we begin today's event, for all participants, kindly switch your audio to silent mode to avoid interruption. Kepada seluruh peserta, dimohon untuk memperhatikan panduan teknis berikut selama acara berlangsung. Seluruh peserta dimohon untuk mengisi tautan pada chatroom. Kemudian seluruh peserta dapat menuliskan pertanyaan pada chatroom dengan format nama, _instansi, atau asal, _narasumber yang dituju, _pertanyaan. Dan materi paparan akan dibagikan di akhir acara melalui tautan yang akan dibagikan melalui chatroom. Dan mohon agar digunakan mode mute selama sesi paparan. Thank you for your kind cooperative and attention. Jalan-jalan ke Taman Bunga, ditemani sahabat lama, waktu seminar akan segera tiba. Izinkan saya memulai acara ini dengan salam pembuka. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. Respectable to Dr. Laksana Trihandoko MSc, Chairman of National Research and Innovation Agency. The Honorable Professor Dr. NLP Indi Darmayanti, DVM MSc, Chairman of Research Organization for Health, National Research and Innovation Agency. The Honorable Harimurti Nuraji, DVM PhD, Head of Research Center for Veterinary Science, Indonesia National Research and Innovation Agency. The Honorable Dr. Wilna Foslo, Group Leader Disease Mitigation Technologies, Cyro Health and Biosecurity. The Honorable Professor Tamaki Okabayashi, DVM PhD, Vice Director of Center for Animal Disease Control, University of Miyazaki, Japan. The Honorable Dr. Agus Wiono, DVM, Researcher at Research Center for Veterinary Science, Indonesia National Research and Innovation Agency. The Honorable Dr. Kingkan Bonsuya Sio, Researcher at Regional Reference Laboratory for FMD in Southeast Asia, Pechong, Thailand. The Honorable Dr. Donald King, Head of FAO World Organization Reference Laboratory for FMD, OEI Reference Laboratories for FMD and SPD Pirbright UK. Then the Honorable to invited guests and all participants. Welcome to the event Talk to Scientists, Food and Mood Disease FMD, Research, Diagnosis, and Control. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fitrina Ekawasti. It's a wonderful and precious chance for me to be your Master of Ceremony in this afternoon. On Thursday, 19th of May 2022 in our event, Talk to Scientists, Food and Mood Disease, FMD, Research, Diagnosis, and Control. Before we come to the main session, let us start this by praying first. So the event that we'll hold in this day will be run well without any obstacle at all. Pray based on individual belief. Start praying, please. Finish. Ladies and gentlemen, on this nice occasion, let me to read several sequences of our agendas. The first is the opening. The second is listen to the national anthem Indonesia Raya. The third is opening remarks. The fourth is speech. The fifth is discussion and closing statement of speakers. The sixth is closing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's open this event by saying Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Step onto the following agenda is listen to the national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, I immediately invite the Chairman of Research Organization for Health, National Research and Innovation Agency. Please welcome Profesor Dr. NLP Indi Darmayanti, DVM, MSI. Time is yours.
Selamat siang, Mbak Ina.
Siang, Bu.
Baik, Bapak Ibu semuanya, terutama the Honorable Chairman of National Research and Innovation Agency, Bapak Dr. Laksono Trihandoko, Head of Research Center for Veterinary Science of BRIN, Head of other research centers within Research Organization for Health of BRIN, Director of Animal Health, Head of Veterinary Laboratories, veterinary officer, scientists, and other invitees. Warm I respect speakers at the scientific talks this morning, this afternoon. Dr. Wilna Fuslo from CSIRO Health and Biosecurity Australia, Professor Tamaki Okabayashi from the Center for Animal Disease Control, SCADIC, University of Miyazaki, Japan, Dr. Agus Wiono, researcher of Research Center for Veterinary Science of BRIN, Dr. Kinkan Bonsuyasiu from Regional Reference Laboratory for FMD in Southeast Asia, NIAH, Thailand, Dr. Donna King from FAO World Reference Laboratory for FMD, Pirbright, UK, Dr. Harimurti Nuraji, Head of Research Center for Veterinary Science as a speaker and also moderator. We have Master of Ceremony, Dr. Fitrin Ekawasti, Mbak Fitrin, and all participants of the talk of scientists that I cannot mention one by one. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya.
Waalaikumsalam wabarakatuh.
In this May 2022, there were reports of an outbreak of FMD. The first case occurred in East Java, reported on May 2022. After that, reports of FMD outbreak were also found in several areas in Indonesia, such as Aceh and West Java. In response to this, BRIN start to support the Ministry of Agriculture via Research Center for Veterinary Science of BRIN and by holding a talk to scientists this afternoon. On this extraordinary occasion, we invite experts in food and mouth disease to share their knowledge with all of us. The first speaker is Dr. Wilna Fuslo, Group Leader Disease Mitigation Technology, CSIRO Health and Biosecurity. She has worked on FMD for nearly 30 years, and she is currently a principal research scientist responsible for the FMD research program at AL. She will explain about a global spread and epidemiology of FMD in this seminar. The second speaker is Prof. Tamaki Okabayashi from the Center for Animal Disease Control, SCADIC, University of Miyazaki, Japan. He is involved in disease control of the FMD outbreak in Miyazaki, Japan in 2010. On this occasion, Prof. Tamaki Okabayashi will share his experience to deal with the FMD outbreak. The third speaker, Dr. Agus Wiono, he is a senior researcher in Research Center for Veterinary Science of BRIN. He is an expert in public policy. At this time, he will explain about policy analysis of FMD in Indonesia. The fourth speaker on this seminar was also amazing. CS Dr. Kinkar Bonsuyasiu, researcher from Regional Reference Laboratory for FMD in Southeast Asia and NIAH, Thailand. She will share knowledge about sample collection, handling, preparation, and field investigation for FMD diagnosis. Our fifth speaker is Dr. Donna King. He has had the vascular disease reference laboratory group of the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. We will learn about molecular analysis and diagnosis of FMD from him. Last but not least, we will listen to Dr. Harimurti Nuraji. He is the head of the Research Center for Veterinary Science. He will explain of the FMD research that will be carried out by BRIN. She will also explain in more detail about FMD. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, tentu kita ketahui bahwa bisa share screen Mbak Ina ini, bahwa kasus FMD di Indonesia pertama kali dilaporkan di 1987 di Malang, kemudian selanjutnya menyebar sampai pada tahun 1974 itu pemerintah Indonesia melakukan vaksinasi FMD, kemudian tahun 1980 kita tahu bahwa kita tidak mempunyai kasus FMD lagi. Namun akhirnya di tahun 1983 terjadi lagi outbreak FMD di Blora, dan kemudian menyebar kembali di Jawa Tengah, dan kemudian hasil dari virus testing yang dilakukan oleh Animal Virus Research Institute di Pilbright, England, itu menunjukkan bahwa FMD yang di tahun 1983 itu disebabkan oleh virus type O. Jadi the virus isolate was known as OISA 383 dari 1983 sampai 1985. Kemudian dilakukan vaksinasi massal, dan akhirnya Indonesia bebas FMD ini dengan resolusi dari OIE tahun 1990. And Bapak Ibu semua, and now in May 2022, FMD outbreak occurs again in Indonesia. Responding to this FMD outbreak, BRIN is ready to support, as said by Bapak Handoko. BRIN has the capacity to support the government in controlling FMD in Indonesia by doing in some areas of research. BRIN is ready to help, provide support, collaborate, and synergize with the Ministry of Agriculture and related institutions such as universities and other research institutions. Hopefully, by starting this webinar, the FMD outbreak in Indonesia can be resolved soon. May this afternoon moment can be an inspiration for all of us to get ideas regarding the research, diagnosis, and control of FMD in Indonesia. I think that's what I want to say. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi Santi Om. Saya kembalikan ke Mbak Ina.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to Professor Dr. NLP Indi Darmayanti for the remarks. Next, I officially invite the Chairman of National Research and Innovation Agency to give opening remarks and opening of the event talk to Science, Food and Mood Disease FMD Research, Diagnosis, and Control. Please welcome Dr. Laksana Trihandoko, MSc. Time is yours.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sehat, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Sang Bajikan. Good afternoon for everyone, ladies and gentlemen, the honorable guests, invited speakers, and all of the participants. First of all, I would like to thank to you all to attend this webinar. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to the talk to scientists to discuss in regard to the current outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Indonesia. So indeed, it is also a great honor for me because I see many experts, either from BRIN and also overseas, who participate in this event. Foot and mouth disease is a highly contagious animal disease that attack cloven hoof animals such as cattle, buffalo, sheep, goats, pig, deer, camels, and also elephants. Although some also reported in other animals, such as bears. So animals that are sick due to foot and mouth disease virus infection show pathognomonic clinical symptoms in the form of blisters, lesions on the mouth and all over the legs. Foot and mouth disease can cause a devastating impact to the affected countries. Previous report also showed that around 9.9 trillion in rupiah per year required to control the foot and mouth disease in Indonesia, and this number might be higher in the future. This disease is highly contagious and still occurs in many countries in the world and causes huge economic losses. Based on the nature of the disease, the distribution of the disease, and the impact of the loss, the World Animal Health Agency put this disease on the OIE listed diseases and other disease of importance list as a disease that must be reported by all countries in the world. This disease was first reported in Indonesia in 1887 in Malang, which then spread to various parts of Indonesia until now. To deliver more information about foot and mouth disease and to strengthen collaboration among stakeholders in Indonesia, the National Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN, organized this Talk to Scientists activity related to foot and mouth disease research with the theme on research, diagnosis, and control. This activity was organized by inviting experts from both BRIN and international experts, such as we have Dr. Wilna Voslo from CSIRO Health and Biosecurity Australia, Professor Tamaki Obayashi from the Center for Animal Disease Control, University of Miyazaki, Japan. We have also Dr. Agus Wiono from the Center for Veterinary Research of BRIN, Dr. Kingkan Ponsuyasio from the Regional Reference Laboratory for Foot and Mouth Disease in Southeast Asia in Thailand. And also we have Dr. Donald King from FAO, World Reference Laboratory for Foot and Mouth Disease in UK, and also Dr. Harimurti Noraji from the Center for Veterinary Research of BRIN. BRIN right now, after the integration, has the capacity to support the government's effort to control foot and mouth disease in Indonesia, of course, together with our Ministry of Agriculture. It could include the implementation of foot-mouth disease detection in Indonesia, the epidemiological studies, also to isolate, to characterize the foot and mouth disease virus by conducting molecular analysis by sequencing or whole genome sequencing. Also to identify compatible vaccines and circulating viruses. Also, we are able to innovate the development of rapid detection of foot and mouth disease through the development of point-care tests, lateral flow devices that can be used in the field. And of course, the last but not least is the vaccine development. Finally, I'm very grateful for the participation and active role of the invited speakers from Indonesia and also overseas, as well as the participants who attend this event. Hopefully, the information distributed through this activity could be useful and support foot-mouth disease control activities in Indonesia and surrounding countries. Thank you very much. I pass back to the MC. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om
Salam wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much to Dr. Laksana Trihandoko, MSc, for the opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, next photo session in group photo. To all participants, expected to open the video Zoom. Kepada seluruh peserta dimohon untuk membuka video Zoom-nya. Kepada Mas Adi, apakah semua sudah terbuka video Zoom-nya dan sudah bisa dimulai untuk fotonya? Oke, siap-siap senyum. Foto session dimulai. 1, 2, 3. Bagaimana? Sudah selesai, Mas Adi?
Boleh satu kali lagi, Mbak?
Oke.
Terima kasih, Mbak Ina.
Terima kasih, Mas. Well, ladies and gentlemen, step on to following agenda or speech. Let me introduce a moderator who will guide the activities and discussion on today by reading his curriculum vitae. Harimurti Nuraji DVM, PhD, was born in Yogyakarta, 15 August 1979. Graduate from Gajah Mada University, Yogyakarta for his DVM, and from the University of Queensland, Australia for his PhD. And now he is Head of Research Center for Veterinary Science, Indonesian National Research and Innovation Agency. Please welcome Harimurti Nuraji DVM, PhD. Time is yours to presentation session.
Thank you very much for the time, Dr. Ina. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Honorable the Chairman of the National Research and Innovation Agency, Dr. Laksana Trihandoko. The Honorable Chairman of the Health Research Organizations, Professor Dr. NLP Indi Darmayanti, MSI. And the Honorable, all the invited speakers here, Dr. Wilna Volslo, Dr. Donald King, Professor Tamaki Okabayashi, Dr. Kinkan, and also Dr. Agus Yono. And also I would like to say greeting to all the participants here, all my seniors, my lecturers, and also my colleagues in the veterinary and also animal health and also livestock field. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Selamat siang, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Mungkin nanti untuk panduan ini saya akan mix antara bahasa Indonesia and English. So, in order to be able to deliver all the informations during these sessions, if you have any questions dalam bahasa Indonesia, Bapak Ibu semuanya, silakan apabila nanti ada pertanyaan dalam bahasa Indonesia, kemudian ada concern di dalam bahasa Indonesia, tidak apa-apa, silakan. I will translate in English. So, for these sessions, I will use sometimes mix between bahasa and also in English. First of all, I would like to say thanks to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for all the enjoyments that give to us the health and also the opportunity to be able to attend this webinar. Second of all, I would like to say thanks to everyone here. And also the first one would like to say thanks to all the invited speakers, the outstanding speakers from overseas and also from Indonesia. And I would like to say thanks for all the participants who already give times within your very busy times to attend this webinar. Sekali lagi, pertama-tama panjatkan syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala yang telah memberikan kesempatan yang luar biasa buat kita semua. Kemudian saya ucapkan terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya buat invited speakers, baik dari dalam maupun luar negeri, kemudian all the participants here. I see some very familiar faces here, my seniors and also my colleagues here. And first, I will introduce myself. I am Harimurti Nuraji. For this webinar, I will be the moderator who will guide to during these sessions. And for these sessions, we are really fortunate, Bapak Ibu semua, pada sesi ini kita sangat beruntung mendapatkan ahli-ahli dari seluruh dunia. We really fortunate that we will be able to invite the very outstanding speakers from around the world. Dr. Wilna Poslo from Cizairo, and also Professor Tamaki Okabayashi from Miyazaki University, and Dr. Tentang from Thailand, and also Pak Agus from BRIN, and also Dr. Donald King from Perbright. And for this, they will deliver the presentations, and for each the presentations will be around 30 minutes, and after that we will have a discussion. Bapak Ibu semuanya, nanti kita akan mendengarkan presentasi yang luar biasa sekali dari para narasumber kita yang luar biasa. Ini sangat beruntung karena kita bisa mengundang narasumber dari ahli-ahli yang expert di bidangnya dari seluruh dunia, baik dari Inggris, UK, kemudian dari Australia, dari Jepang, kemudian dari Thailand. Kemudian ada juga narasumber dari BRIN, yaitu Dr. Agus. Baik, I won't talk too much for this session. We can start with the first presentations from Dr. Wilna Poslo. Before that, I will say hello first to the invited speaker, Dr. Wilna, Dr. Tentang, Dr. Donald, and also Professor Tamaki and Pak Agus. Here, okay. The first one is Dr. Wilna Poslo. I think she's already mentioned by Prof. Indi. She is the group leader of the Disease Mitigation Technology, Cizairo Health and Biosecurity. She is Senior Principal Research Scientist at Cizairo Australia Center for Disease Preparedness in Geelong. She is, at that time, I know her. She's really outstanding. I work in the same lab at that time in Australian Animal Health Laboratory. Although now I think it changed the name now to Alpha ICDP. And then for the last 30 years has focused on transboundary animal disease, livestock species and wildlife maintenance. Example, foot and mouth disease and African swine fever. She is the group leader of 5 teams looking at disease mitigation technologies and is responsible for the FMD research program at AL. I think it's probably changed to ICD. And then contribute to ensuring Australia plays a global role in the control of FMD, or one of the 6 international members of the World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, FMD ad hoc group on the evaluation of FMD status of member countries, and serve on the executive committee of the Global FMD Research Alliance, Vaccine Expert Advisory Group, and Vaccine Bank Contract Committee in Australia. Seperti Bapak Ibu lihat di sini, ini kita undang ahli yang sangat tepat untuk kita saat ini. As you see in the biography. We're really fortunate to invite her, and then this is opportunity for us to learn about the FMD and also the global spread and epidemiology of FMD. So hello, Dr. Wilna. I think time is yours, around 30 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Harimurti. I really appreciate it, and let's hope everything works.
Good. Yep.
So it's really a big pleasure for me to be invited to present at this very fabulous meeting. So I would just like to begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people as the traditional owners of the lands that I'm meeting on today, and I want to pay my respect to their elders past and present. Normally I reside on Wadawurrung country, but I am traveling at the moment, so I'm actually in a different part of Australia. So I've been asked to cover a huge topic today, and due to the time limit, I'll only be able to touch on a lot of aspects very briefly. So I'm going to jump right into it. So of course, foot-and-mouth disease is a viral disease, so it's caused by a virus. The virus is called foot-and-mouth disease virus, and it is one of the Picorna viruses. One of the problems with foot-and-mouth disease is that it has a very wide host range, and over 70 ungulate species have been shown to be infected. But of course, from a livestock perspective and farming, we are more concerned about cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs, because these are the animals that we have in high densities. Now, very briefly, again, foot-and-mouth disease causes lesions or blisters on the top side of the tongue or the sides of the tongue, on the gums and the lips, and then also on the coronary band and the interdigital space of the feet and the teats of lactating animals. So basically all areas where there is friction. Mouth lesions are not as pronounced in sheep and pigs. Another aspect that makes foot-and-mouth disease quite complex is the fact that there are 7 serotypes of foot-and-mouth disease virus. So in effect, we can say that we have seven different foot-and-mouth disease viruses. One of the serotypes, serotype C, has not been reported since 2004, and we think that this serotype may have become extinct. Now, not only do we have 7 serotypes, but we also deal with a disease and a virus that changes very rapidly. And because of that, you get novel variants being generated, which has an impact on vaccination, because a novel virus may be able to escape the vaccine production, but it also has an impact on the diagnostic tools that we use, because we need to ensure that our diagnostic tools can cover against these new variants that are arising. Now, because foot-and-mouth disease is endemic in many parts of the world, and there are all these many different serotypes, the FAO and OIE have come up with the idea to divide the globe into different viral pools. And this is more to try and assist with control of the virus by prescribing specific vaccines. So I just very briefly want to show what I mean by the different virus pools. So for example, in Southeast Asia, we have one pool of viruses, and within that pool, we have serotype O, serotype A, and Asia 1 viruses, but specific variants that belong in that pool. And so the rest of the globe had been divided into different pools where there are similar serotypes, but also similar variants. And I will come back to this in a little bit more detail when I talk about the sort of global movements of viruses that are of importance at the moment. So again, just very briefly about foot-and-mouth disease. it affects a lot of animals. So we say that the morbidity is high, and especially when animals don't have immunity to the virus, lots of animals can become infected. But the mortality is generally low, so not many animals die from foot and mouth disease. It's mostly young animals that would die from the disease. Now, there's direct and indirect impacts from foot and mouth disease. So the direct impact is on the productivity, where we see a decrease in milk production, loss of weight and condition of the animals, sometimes abortions. And when it affects draft animals, especially during periods when we want to plow the lands, foot and mouth disease also can impact on food security, because it may not be possible to actually prepare fields to grow food further from that. Now, most animals recover within 2 weeks, not all of them to their full productivity, but it begs the question, why is foot and mouth disease so important if very few animals die and most animals recover within 2 weeks? And it's mostly due to the indirect impact, which is economic. When a country that had been free of the disease before, such as Indonesia, has an outbreak of foot and mouth disease, it has a huge impact on their trade, and it becomes very, very difficult to sell animals and animal products outside of the country. Now, if we look closer at the disease, the incubation period, and the incubation period is the time from infection to the time that you see clinical disease. And the range is between 1 to 14 days, but in most cases, it's more between 2 to 5 days from the time that the animal is exposed to the virus to the time that you see clinical disease. And we see this range in time period because it depends a little bit on how much virus the animal had been exposed to. What is the strain of the virus that is circulating? What species is being infected? Is it cattle or pigs? Do these animals have any pre-existing immunity? So have they been vaccinated or infected before? The physiological status of the animals, whether they're healthy or not, and then also the route of transmission. Now, how does the virus transmit? So it's mostly through direct contact between infected and susceptible animals. So when the animals get together, they have close contact, the virus is transmitted. But it can also be transmitted indirectly through fomites. So these are infected materials on a farm, contact of animals with the excretion of other infected animals. It could be infected products such as milk and semen, and it can also be due to mechanical transmission where the virus sits on people or vehicles moving between farms. Now, airborne transmission can occur, and over long distances, it's a very rare occasion, but it is possible for limited airborne transmission to occur between farms. But it's dependent on a lot of factors, and it's mostly important when pigs are infected if they are under intensive farming. So if you have lots of pigs together, they become infected, they can release a virus plume. Now, there are also some virus host determinants that play a role in foot and mouth disease transmission. And importantly, there it's the amount of virus that's being excreted, the length of time that the excretion means, and then also the way that the virus is released into the environment. But it's also dependent on the ability of the virus to survive outside of the animal host, and therefore the conditions that climatic conditions maybe, or the organic level around the virus. The routes and quantities of infectivity required to initiate infection is also different between the different species. And then it's also important how dense and how many animals are infected and how many susceptible animals there are. And then, of course, how much do they interact with each other? So all of these points are important in the transmission of foot and mouth disease virus. Now, virus excretion is really very important because infected animals start excreting virus before you see clinical signs. And this can be up to 4 days before we know that the animals had been infected. So, of course, if you move animals during that period, you may think that they're not infected, that they may be excreting virus. And of course, that poses a threat once movement occurs and there's contact with susceptible animals. It's important to also realize that when animals are clinically infected, so you actually see the lesions, they excrete more virus than during the phase that they're incubating, or if they are subclinically infected. So some animals may be infected, but they actually never show clinical disease. Saliva contains really very high levels of infectious virus, so it's always something to be mindful of when animals are excreting. We've mentioned milk before, so cow's milk can contain high levels of virus, also up to 4 days before we realize that these animals are infected. Semen can be a source of infection from infected bulls. Embryos are normally safe if they are treated according to international standards. And then urine and feces can also contain some virus. So we need to be very mindful of the excretions that these infected animals are leaving behind and how they can contaminate the environment with virus. Now, just to highlight a few important facts when foot-and-mouth disease infects cattle. Now, cattle are highly susceptible due to the fact that they inhale large amounts of air, and therefore, if there's virus in the air, they inhale large amounts of virus. We know that the Bos taurus breeds are more susceptible than Bos indicus breeds, but we also know that quality vaccines are efficacious in cattle and should provide good protection if we ensure that it's a quality vaccine and the vaccination campaign is executed in a very controlled manner. But of course, cattle can excrete virus into the environment during acute and subclinical infection, and then cattle can become persistently infected. Now, I'll get back a little bit to persistent infection later. So just when we look at pigs, so pigs are not as susceptible to foot-and-mouth infection as cattle and sheep. They don't become carriers of the virus, but they are super excretors. So they excrete huge amounts of virus into the air. And we've already touched on that when you have high density of pig farming that may cause a virus plume. Pigs don't react as well to vaccination as ruminants, but we also know that they are free roaming in endemic settings and they may have access to swill, which can cause infection in pigs that way. So even in extensive farming situations, we need to be very mindful about pigs. And of course, we know that in some parts of the world, there's large numbers of pigs, and therefore they can play quite an important role in the epidemiology. Now with ruminants, the sheep and goats, they don't show overt clinical signs. And we know from some of the work that we've done with our colleagues in Lao PDR that goats have become infected in Southeast Asia, but nobody has noticed any clinical signs. It was only when we looked with a sero survey that we realized that these goats had been infected before. They are less effective transmitters of disease than cattle. They're also well protected by vaccines, and they can also become persistently infected. So just to summarize this a little bit in an infographic, so when we look at the airborne excretion, cattle and sheep excrete not that much virus into the environment, but pigs excrete a large amount of virus into the environment. But yet, if we look at the susceptibility to airborne viruses, cattle are far more susceptible to airborne infection compared to sheep and pigs. Now, what do we mean by persistent infection and carrier status? Now, a carrier is defined as an animal where we can detect the virus in the nasopharyngeal fluids 28 days after infection. And we know that a percentage of animals soon after an outbreak harbor the virus in their nasopharyngeal regions. But there's no circulating virus, and there's no virus in the excretions of these animals. We also know that vaccination does not prevent the carrier status. Now, we should not confuse this with subclinically infected animals that show a viremia, but there's no clinical disease, but they do excrete virus in their secretions and excretions. And I've already mentioned the disease can be subclinical in sheep and goats, and vaccination with the presence of neutralizing antibodies will lower the level of circulating virus. So there's a difference between the persistent infection and subclinically infected animals. Now, there's a difference in duration of persistent infection in species. So in cattle, persistence can be up to 3.5 years. In sheep and goats, it's more short-lived, sort of 12 months to 2 to 3 months. So there's a perception that during this time of persistence, these animals are a danger to other susceptible animals, that they can make them ill. But this has never been shown in the field. There's experimental evidence that transmission can occur, but not in the field. So I just also briefly want to touch on the role of feral animals, because we're always concerned about what our wildlife or wild pigs or wild buffalo may do. It's always very difficult to predict. And there's many factors that play a role that will determine how important your feral animals are, such as the distribution and the habitat connectivity between the different feral species, the density of the animals, the distribution and the density of susceptible animals, the movements of both the susceptible animals and the feral animals, the social organization and group structure of ferals, the age structure, and then also climatic or seasonal effects. So it's always very difficult when you deal with an outbreak to consider all these aspects and the role that feral animals may play in the epidemiology. Now, as I said, it's just a very, very brief touch on the epidemiology of foot-and-mouth disease. So I want to move on a little bit on the global status of foot-and-mouth disease. And I want to say upfront that I'm thanking Dr. Don King for sharing some of the slides with me. Within the laboratory network group, there's a lot of collaboration to ensure that we have the most up-to-date information around what is going on inside the world, around the world in terms of foot-and-mouth disease. So what I'm presenting is a result of a huge collaboration between all the different reference laboratories and associate laboratories. So I've mentioned the pools before, and here we see it again, sort of superimposed on the map of the world, and it also shows in red where the endemic countries are. So of course, in this picture, Indonesia is still seen as free from foot-and-mouth disease. So there are many underlying causes for the movement of animals. And a big driver is the increased demand for animal protein, and probably also religious festivals when there's a lot of movement of animals. We know that people migrate with their animal products, and sometimes it's just an opportunity such as a new road that's being built. But if we look at the map that we have here, which shows the density of cattle populations around the world and the movement of animals, we can see that quite often the movement of virus goes from areas with high density of cattle into other areas. So I've just put an arrow here for Indonesia. Of course, we don't know at the moment exactly where the introduction had been, but we can see a pattern of movement across the globe. So again, without the addition of the most recent introductions, this is just an indication of the different foot-and-mouth disease lineages that had been reported before in Southeast Asia. And if we look a little bit at the India lineage, we can see that there's been a lot of reports from many countries recently having been exposed to O. India 2001. Again, if we look a little bit at how many of the most recent introductions had been caused by O. India 2001, we can see that between 2018 to 19, we still saw the prevalence of other serotype O lineages, such as O Southeast Asia, Myanmar 98, Pan Asia. But then from 20 to 21, most of those outbreaks had been due to O India 2001. So just focusing a little bit on O India 2001, there are two sublineages that have been spreading quite a lot, the D and E lineages. And since 2013, there've been a lot of escapes from Pool 2, which is the East or Asian part of the world. And we can see many introductions, first of all, with the lineage D spread to countries such as Tunisia, Algeria, Liberia, sort of more in a westward direction, Sri Lanka. And then we had the emergence of the 2001E lineage that had spread into Saudi Arabia, but then also into Southeast Asia and into Mauritius. And I've added Indonesia here as now the latest country suffering from an escape or a spread of the 2001E lineage virus. Now, if we just put this on a map, and this is a map indicating all the recent sort of the news headlines, if we focus a little bit on the Russian Federation, 2001E, Kazakhstan, 2001E, Mauritius, 2001E, and of course now Indonesia as well. So it sort of begs the question, what is so special about this virus? Why is it spreading so widely? And I think we don't fully understand it yet. But what's really important is that we realize that we require more samples to understand the full extent of the spread of this specific lineage. And it's referring to all the countries in the region that are affected to it, but also an opportunity for Indonesia at the moment to ensure that enough data and samples are collected during this outbreak, that even if it's retrospectively, later down the line, we try and understand how this had happened better. So it's really an excellent opportunity to take samples, even if they are just stored away for future investigation and future research projects, to ensure that we can understand the spread of the virus better. So it's sort of a call that I'm putting out there to everyone in Indonesia to consider this opportunity to help the rest of the world understand this particular lineage better. So I just want to thank everyone for listening, and I really want to just again extend my thanks to Don King, the World Reference Laboratory, and all the other reference laboratories for sharing their information with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wilna, for your great presentations. I think this really very important information for us, particularly to understand more about what about the foot and mouth diseases and what is the current circulating virus. Bapak Ibu semuanya, ini luar biasa paparan dari Dr. Wilna. Beliau menyampaikan dengan jelas ada I remember here there are several keywords for all of us. Ini ada beberapa kata kunci yang mungkin bisa bermanfaat buat Bapak Ibu semuanya. Salah satunya bahwa PMK is highly contagious. Kemudian tadi disampaikan ada bagaimana transmisinya, bagaimana mekanismenya, what is the difference between subclinical and also persistently infected. Ini akan penting. Kemudian factors that influence the airborne diseases, the airborne disease transmission, and also how the transmission can occur. And Bapak Ibu semuanya tadi dipaparkan dengan sangat jelas melalui infografik terkait what are the difference between cattle, sheep, and sheep, goat, and also pig here. Terutama terkait dengan bagaimana ekskresi virusnya, kemudian yang kedua bagaimana susceptibility-nya. Ini sangat menarik. Kemudian yang terakhir, tadi pesan beliau, I think the last one, she mentioned about what is the important to study, to do research more on the virus that's currently circulating in Indonesia. And then she mentioned about collecting the samples more, and then probably storage, and then understand more about the virus, so it can give information to the rest of the world. Jadi Bapak Ibu semuanya, ini kesempatan yang luar biasa sekali buat kita semua, paling tidak untuk mengkoleksi sampel, kemudian pelajari lebih lanjut, mengkarakterisasi, sehingga kita dapat informasi yang lebih terkait dengan virus. Again, thank you, Dr. Wilna, for your great presentations. So, Dr. Wilna will have a discussion after all the presentations. Is that okay for you? Good. Next, we will have another outstanding speakers from Indonesia. He is Pak Agus Wiono. Dr. Agus Wiono, are you with me?
Yes, thank you, Dr.
Okay, before we started, I will read his biography. Dr. Hewan Agus Wiono, researcher at the Research Center for Veterinary Science, National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. He is the researcher at the Research Institute for Vet Science, Balai Penelitian Veteriner, Balitvet, from 1985 to 2005. A bureaucrat within Ministry of Agriculture. He is the former of the director of the Veterinary and Animal Health, 2005 to 2010. Researcher at the National Research Center for Vet Science or Veterinary Science, Balai Besar Penelitian Veteriner Balitvet, 2010 to 2022. And then he now is researcher at the National Indonesian Research Center for Veterinary Science, BRIN, from 2022 to present. Awards that had been received for Dr. Agus Wiono are Utoyo Award, Exemplary Researcher, Indonesian Center for Animal Research and Development, ICARD, Ministry of Agriculture, and Satya Lencana Karya Satya 10 ke-20, the President of Republik Indonesia. Pak Agus Wiono, for these sessions, you will present around 30 minutes, and after that, waiting for the discussion session. Pak Agus Wiono, time is yours.
Terima kasih Pak Hari. Thank you, Dr. Hari. This is my great honor to be here, sitting together with a world-class expert on FMD. So I'm lucky that I'm presentation after Dr. Wilna and Professor Okabayashi, so I don't have to talk about the detail of the disease. I'd rather the analysis perspective of FMD. So I'd like to share my presentation, Pak Ari.
Sure. Yep. Monggo, Pak Agus.
Is that ready?
Yes, it's clear, and then you can change to presentations.
Okay.
Yes, very good.
So the title of my paper is Foot and Mouth Disease in Indonesia, a policy. As I said before, that I would not to talk in great detail about the disease by Dr. Wilna as well as Professor Okabayashi. Then I will try to propose my presentation outline as follows: the current issues on FMD in Indonesia. We're talking about current issues of FMD in Indonesia. It's really current. This is only a matter of days, weeks, few weeks. So the current issues is I was gathering from any news, even from WhatsApp group, the current issues on FMD in Indonesia. I try to divide the current two parts: short-term period and then the middle to long-term period, tendenciously for the discussion. And the second chapter will be discussion using two approaches. Since this analysis this is very new, so I'd rather use focus group discussion on emerging infectious disease and re-emerging or Indonesian Research Center for Pet Science as one approach. Will be OAI. That's the approach to discuss the current. Based on this approach, then we are going to have. I'm going to propose some recommendation at period and middle to long-term period, and then closing remarks. So we move now in current issues on FMD in Indonesia. As I said before, that this is really current. Only a couple of days ago or weeks ago, so that current issues is gathered from TV, from media, from social media, from WhatsApp group. So based on that, then I clearly identify some aspect. The first thing is aspect of quick analysis. I do hope that Indonesia has already had the all stakeholders, cross-sectors. The quick analysis result hopefully also of current situation and impact of FMD. This is for this is to be used as to evaluate resources and gap analysis to regain FMD free status in the term period. And then the second first topic is about the regulatory aspect, of course. Not only regulatory itself, but especially the harmonization of the law, the regulation, and also harmonization and coordination on implementation in the field, in the situation in the field. So regulatory is the first, second big aspect. Followed by the next aspect is early detection, report, and response. As I said before, that since this is very new, so if we had before presentation by Dr. Wina and Professor Okabayashi to know a lot about this now. So up until I prepared this paper, then talking about early detection, report, and response, the big question is about clinical science, about laboratory diagnosis, and then about the movement control at border area and livestock market closure. Livestock market closure itself is a big discussion actually, when talking about how this area, livestock market should be treated. That's the basic discussion under the aspect of early detection, report, and response. We know that the livestock market closure is part of the movement control, not part of the hygiene sanitation or the zoonotic or not zoonotic. And then the big is current issues and still under the period of short, the vaccine and vaccination. I'm I'm appreciate the Puspetma who has already identified and serotyped the causal agent of FMD virus in Indonesia in collaboration with Central Vet in Jogja, Balai Besar Vet Wates. So I appreciate it. And then I think we are going to confirm the reference lab in the Fulbright Institute. And then at the same time, then as the first step for selecting the vaccine, then Fulbright Institute is the first step. And then the big discussion about the vaccine and vaccination is how and when we are going to have the emergency vaccine entry to Indonesia. How best, how good, and how quick. And then the best existing data is by Dr. Donald King, which we will in the next presentation. And then the circulating viruses around has the vaccine matching very high with serotype 01 Manisa. Big also discussion about emergency vaccine population. What are we going to vaccinate? Whether it's only cattle or also goat and also pig. So that's also the big discussion. And then of course how the vaccination and post-vaccination monitoring program should be conducted has to be according to the guideline. And then in this topic, vaccine and vaccination, last but not the least for the vaccine and vaccination, we do hope that Puspetma will fail to have a local vaccine. Has already had experience on this at the end of 1918. So at that time, Indonesia has had the vaccination program only using Puspetma vaccine. So reputation on that. Talking about the vaccine matching result, figures showing from Dr. Donald King, showing that the circulating serotype region is has high matching percentage with 01 Manisa. This is for decision making on vaccine selection. And then the vaccine matching of FMD virus in Indonesia, I think has yet to be identified by the Fulbright Institute. Still on the short-term period issues, I try to put in this aspect, animal product safety aspect, because this is also discussion in the news, whether zoonotic or non-zoonotic, including the question in chat. Just very recently. Still question whether this is zoonotic or non-zoonotic and what should be done. And then Dr. Wilna already answered very, very clearly. The second under this aspect is it is the need of to have the abattoir with standard meat watering facilities, especially in the infected areas, in order to have a regain FMD free status at the future. It's a must. And then the second topic is in the discussion is the second aspect. The next aspect is individual health versus population health. This is not to we know that vet in the field is eager to cure the infected cattle, and they are very proud to have the cattle being recovered. But at the same time, aspect is probably the disease spread due to this. So it's better to understand, and the better understanding on transmission of FMD at different scales is very important in terms of policy making on regain FMD free status. And stamping out, a lot of discussion, stamping out with vaccination, movement control is preferable. And then last but not the least, for the short period, this immediate disease control strategy, we know that we have Idul Adha, vaccination in different area with different treatment, different policy, hopefully will contain the disease. And to do that, I think we have to have continuous profiling or mapping of disease status. We say some area as red, yellow, or green, and we have different policy. And then at the same time, we have to update it, keep on updating the data. Then we move to the middle to long-term period, issues containing technical aspect and policy aspect. The technical aspect, again, we have the post-vaccine and vaccine strategy. Since we are going to have some area with free, hopefully, inshallah, will be free of FND with vaccination, some area free of FND without vaccination. So vaccine and vaccination strategy based on 3 zones, red, yellow, and green again. And then evaluation of circulating virus is a must. Movement control of vaccinated animals to free unvaccinated population areas is also has to be through the policy, has to grow to have the policy on it. Then I think this is the last aspect of middle to long term regulatory. When we are talking about regulatory, then we are talking about the vet science, veterinary services in the era of decentralization. We have to admit that, and we have to admit that we have no one-line command on vet service in Indonesia. However, we are having some exit strategy, for example, for the as a priority in the area, in the certain area, the vet services as a pilihan, as a choice for decision making on again regain FMD free status. But this has to be discussed. Now we move to this the discussion. As I said before, that for discussion we use 2 approaches. The first approach is to use results from focus group discussion on preparedness for entry and spread of emerging and re-emerging animal diseases in Indonesia. This FGD was conducted, I remember, was conducted March of 2020, was the very first day President Jokowi announced the COVID-19. President Jokowi announced COVID-19 in Indonesia 2nd of March. So this is the second day after the announcement. At that time, nobody using mask. Living still normal. The background of this FGD actually is to implement the presidential instruction number 4/2019 concerning capacity building in preventing, detecting, and responding to disease outbreaks, global pandemics, and nuclear, biological, and chemical emergencies. And then the second background, there are some backgrounds, but the second main thing is to we know that no longer recognize border between countries in terms of disease, in terms of disease spread, and in this case, we test FMD. So the potential to present transboundary diseases, we put as a FMD as the first disease, and good will be already there, but already in certain area at the time could well be ASF, ASF already there in Indonesia. But we put it as a potential present transboundary diseases. In this FGD, we invite 5 main keynote speakers: Director of Animal Health, the Director or Head of Animal Quarantine, Animal Biosecurity, Agriculture Quarantine Agency, and then from Ministry of Health, Director of Vector and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. We also invite, of course, the Director of Balitvet, Ibu Indi at the time, and then we also invite from BRIN, from intelligence, from State Intelligence Agency. And then we also provide for reviewers and all. Present as a reviewer discussion. The first was Ibu Tata, Bu Dr. Tri Satyanati Pospos, PhD of SIFA, Center of Indonesian Vet Analytical Studies. She's also the head of Animal Health, Animal Quarantine Commission. And then also Pak Budi Triakoso is the former Director of Animal Health and former Head of Agriculture Quarantine Agency. And also we invite from BRIN, Director of Industrial Technology Development, BRIN. And then we also invite from Kemenko PMK, Coordinating Ministry of Human Development and Culture. And we invite Pak Israel Sami Harjo from Defense University Ministry of Defense. He was previously from BRIN. And then we also invite the Director of Conservation and Biodiversity of Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and also of Disaster and Fire Management, Home Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs. And last but not the least, the Chairman of PBPDHI, Executive Board of Indonesian Vet Association, Dr. Munawar. And then providing the presentation of keynote speech, and then also the reviewer. We identify the weakness. We identify the temuan. We identified the unoptimal in preventing entry. Namely the utilization of national resources still not optimal. The weak of disease prevention system that and weak control movement, and then the preparedness of vet laboratory in detecting new infectious disease is still weak. And then we also we also identify the weakness and unoptimal in detecting disease outbreaks, especially filing or mapping of areas at risk, especially for emerging and re-emerging animal disease in the detection of disease system. And then there is a problem, a process of sending time. And then we also identify the problem, probably the use of precise and accurate information system that coordinated at every level, from center to region, region to the center. Level of public awareness on reporting, you know that. And then we know is it not easy to say that the implementation of these cases is still in the bracket bureaucratic. So there is a time gap in providing action and slow response in outbreaks. And then not to stress this, but the implementation number 3 2017 about AutoVet, about vet authority, not yet fully implemented in the local government, probably in the also central government. So this has to be discussed when we are talking about regain FMD free status and talking about not entering again some And then talking about challenge, and we are also identify the weakness and also unoptimal in responding quickly, especially for wet laboratories, are not still optimal in implementing emergency response to the number of animal health workers is not enough, and then the still lack of understanding importance of applying biosecurity and biosafety. And then in the infected area, in the threatened area, information that circulates quickly all media, including social media, causing panic and public unrest. And then this is the more general. The concept of One Health is not yet fully understood by all stakeholders. Providing that challenge, providing the speakers presentation and discuss viewers and also the participant, then we attempt to identify the root cause. There are seven. We attempt to identify the root cause. We have seven points. There is no one-line command in preventing, detecting, and responding to the disease outbreaks. There is strong egocentric or sectoral ego in handling animal disease. No coordinating, detecting, and responding to animal disease outbreaks. Limitation or no optimal utilization of resources. And then legal compliance and law enforcement is still very low, and then limited research budget, and then legal regulations still overlap, and do not anticipate the situation that will develop related to animal disease control. That's the root cause. As I said before, we have two approaches to discuss this situation, and I'd like to propose the OAI Performance Fed Lab, OAI Performance Fed Services result as one of the second approaches. When we are talking about fed services, then we're talking about fed domain. It's very from the left, non-food product, and then we have also animal feed, a medical product, medicinal product, genetics, and then international trade, and in animals, and then human food. So it's very complex. It's very wide aspect. And then talking about OAI-PVS pathway, we are in this diagram. In the right-hand side, you can see that that OAI tool for the evaluation of performance of fed services, 2010. In this paper, we are going to discuss the PVS evaluation and the PVS gap analysis result. OAI PVS is continuous process aiming to sustainably improve the compliance of fed services with international standard. Voluntary OAI PVS pathway missions are done on the voluntary and confidential basis by OAI accredited expert. So the objective of the PVS is designed to assist fed service to establish their current level of performance, identify gaps and weakness, and then to share vision with stakeholders, including the private sectors, and establish priorities and carry out strategic initiatives. Pak Bagus Purmajaya almarhum, semoga beliau dilapangkan kuburnya. I took this slide from Pak Bagus' presentation, and it was about 20 institutions or more as a field visit for the mission of OAI, PVS OAI mission. And then based on this result, there are 14, if I'm not mistaken, 14 priority policies to be implemented. The first is that it is necessary to increase the level of Directorate of Animal Health to the level of Director General. That's not the that's from OIE conclusion. Result. And then the second, coordination and communication between relevant agencies within the Ministry of Agriculture need to be improved. And then strengthening the communication and clear division of authority between the central government and the local government, as well as the chain of command from the center to local government need to be established in the current era. And then number 4 already finished, the finalization and implementation of animal health law, undang-undangnya sudah jadi. And then the 5th is, and the next is about the resources in the recommendation up until the 8th. The 9th is the national strategic plan for control of all strategic animal disease. We have already had some, but not all. And the 10th is coordination between donor agencies in Indonesia, and then the capacity of regional vet lab, BFED, need to be strengthened. And then it is necessary to have a national program for food. Now we have already have BPM-SPH. And but this program, we have the institution, but we have a national program. And then it is necessary to increase the frequency of meeting with the private sector. I know that the director of animal health had some program with the private sectors, including in the chicken with the program of compartmentalization. And then 14, the last but not the least, is the quarantine and border traffic control need to be strengthened. Now that's the PVS the evaluation. Then we move to the gap analysis. Our target with the existing condition. Talking about coordination capability of the vet services, there is not an adequate vertical line of authority, i.e. autonomy with bricks in the veterinary service chain of command. That's the in the yellow color. And then better coordination is required to ensure systematically and consistently address risk along the entire production chain from farm to fork. And then talking about implementation of vet legislation, a new regulation on animal health system that bring together all components, including animal health and animal quarantine, is due to develop. Now already developed, but we have to, I think, as I said in the current issues, some has to be harmonized literally and also in the field level in the implementation. Now talking about management and strategic planning, there is strong need to leadership and management training in key areas such as strategic policy and planning, advocacy including influence and awareness, program project management, human resources management, stakeholders engagement, records management, audit and evaluation, budgeting, finance and assist management, including budgeting. So this is why very important talking about planning, strategic planning. When talking about national coordination of animal health lab services, overall there is a need for an intensive review of the whole national animal health laboratory network, with a careful focus on accredited roles and referral arrangements rather than just blanket or individual capacity building of separate laboratories, unfortunately. And then talking about scientific risk risk-based approach, there are current gaps and inconsistencies in policies and procedures of the vet services due to insufficient application of scientific risk-based approach to import decision and disease. That's the end of this recommendation. Using that result, I tried to propose the recommendation for the paper. Number one, the declaration quickly and accurately accompanied by a closure of the area to stop the disease spread without causing counterproductive and public unrest. Strengthen and intensify coordination and cooperation. I'm sure this already been done for FMD in Indonesia currently, but based on the discussion as I said before, I hope the first and the second already conducted, and the third I'm sure already also they've been planned and already been conducted. Increase surveillance capacity and capability to respond quickly, quarantine measures at the entrance, exit, and between region, inter area, inter island. The fourth, increase the socialization. We know that this is new disease, so we need socialization, and then implementation of fast, precise, effective depopulation of infected. As I said before, this is fast and combination between vaccination, depopulation, and movement control. And then management of mass media, management of mass media and social media. And I know that now the government has one satu pintu, one door for all information, but has to be continuously and available for public on the day-to-day basis. And then the seven, improve integrated, coordinated risk communication in epidemic prevention and emergency response to epidemics. And then that's for the short-term period. For the middle to long period, I have 6 proposed recommendations: strengthening the SISKESMANAS or National Animal Health System, and then in accordance with good governance, and then optimizing national strategies in increasing national capacity to prevent, detect, and respond, strengthening the disease prevention system, including for the quarantine, including in initial evaluation in the importing country, and information agreement based on the risk analysis, and then effective control at the entry point. Increase the capacity and capability of wet lab, both quantity and quality, and then improve coordination, cooperation, synergy of national vet laboratories, and then increase the number of animal health. And this closing remarks, I'm going to quote Dr. Jeff Hammond, and also last same sense to Ibu Tata, and I just quote this. It is very important to consider the whole picture to enable disease control and not expect vaccination at all. Surveillance, awareness, early reporting, movement control, biosecurity on and off farm, and vaccination are all required. And then last Sim said, control of FMD is everyone's responsibility, not just government or farmers, also traders, transporters, slaughter suppliers, private and public vet. Government cannot do this alone. And then last but not the least, I'm from research science, so I said that research on FMD is urgently needed as a scientific-based policymaking for regain FMD free status in Indonesia. it's the veterinary analysis team, previously in Balikpetno in PRV, and also member of WhatsApp group AEEVI, which I learned a lot from that group. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Agus, for really outstanding presentations. I think it's all about the policy analysis here. And I think it's important that we mentioned that there was a meeting before FGD at least in 2020 regarding to the preparedness of the emerging and the emerging disease in Indonesia. It's quite interesting at that time where the result of the analysis showing that there are particular aspects that we need to strengthen at that time. And now we learn from the case of FMD Indonesia so that those particular aspects that already mentioned in the previous meeting or FGD, focus group discussion, is so us that there are actually need to be strengthened. Bapak Ibu semua, itu luar biasa paparan dari Pak Agus. There are many aspects there from short term, mid term to the long term period. And the recommendation that we need to do at least to support the government efforts to control the food and mouth disease in Indonesia. Again, thank you Dr. Agus for the excellent presentation. Bapak Ibu semuanya yang saya hormati, all the honorable participants here, senior-senior saya, Bapak Ibu semuanya yang tidak bisa saya sebutkan satu persatu, luar biasa sekali. Ini saya lihat profesor-profesor ikut join di sini, yang saya tidak sebutkan satu persatu, ini saya banyak sekali. Kemudian ada senior-senior dan juga guru saya, yang ada di Direktorat Jenderal Peternakan dan Kesehatan Hewan, kolega-kolega saya, teman-teman saya sekolah, kemudian kolega-kolega saya di bidang veteriner yang tidak bisa saya sebutkan satu persatu. Juga ada private sectors here. I saw that there are many, there are some the private company already joined in this meeting. Bapak Ibu semuanya yang saya hormati, jangan pergi dulu. There are two very outstanding speaker that will cover the technical aspects of the diagnosis. The first will be molecular analysis and diagnosis, and the second one will be expert that explain a lot about the sample handling, collection, and field investigation. Okay, next. Dr. Kinkan, are you with me?
I am here.
Okay, good. Hello, Dr. Kinkan, you with me?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you. Before Dr. Kinkan started the presentation, I will read her biography. Dr. Kinkan Punsuya, the researcher in research in regional reference laboratory in Southeast Asia. She is a veterinary officer in the National Institute of Animal Health, Department of Livestock Development, and is working in the National Animal Health. She's working a lot with particularly covering laboratory and diagnosis. And also, we will learn a lot about how to handle sample. Okay, Dr. Kinkan, for presentations. Time.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Change to the presentation mode.
Okay, can you see this one?
No changing. Just click from the presentation mode, please.
This moment.
No worries.
Can see this?
Yes, excellent. Perfect.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Chairman, for introduction. My name is Kinkan Munsayasayo from ILFMD Pakchong, Thailand. So I'm really appreciate for the invitation to share our activity information that can be useful for FMD sample management. So today I would like to share activity and routine work that would be related to sample collection, handling, and preparation that are leading to the field investigation for the FMD diagnosis. So how we handle the FMD cases in our country. Okay, from this slide, basically we have to follow the FMD diagnosis standard by the FMD diagnostic guideline. This graph on the left side represent the diagnostic window for the FMD, show the temporal distribution of the FMD in the different biological sample. For example, in the black line represent for the clinical lesion, vascular epithelium. So we look at the red line represent the FMD in the blood, and the orange line represent the mucosal swab, and the last one, the blue line, is number 4, represent the antibody response, FMD specific antibody in serum sample. So this graph represent the important thing to consider, that we should collect the appropriate sample for the diagnostic work and possibly to get the result as we assume. The another graph on the right side that we that can explain the selection of the appropriate test method for the FMD suspected case, that we have to get the sample from the field, and also used for consider when the time period after the clinical sign of FMD occur in the field. So if we can select the appropriate test method that is related to the time period of the sample, we can get a good result as well. In IL Pakchong, so we divided FMD diagnostic work into the 3 parts that are antigen detection, the second one antibody detection, the third one the strain characterization, and also we have the supportive team for the chemical and also produce the in-house reagents from the reagent preparation unit of the IL. The first part, antigen detection, consists of the ELISA typing, viral isolation, and of course real-time RT-PCR and one-step multiplex RT-PCR. And the second one, antibody detection, consists of LP ELISA, which is the quantitative method to measure an antibody titer against the FMD in the serum sample from cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, and pig before and or after FMD vaccination, or in the serum sample from the animal suspect to be infected with the FMD. In case of the NSP test, so is the detection of the antibody to 3ABC non-structural protein of the FMD that use the blocking ELISA of the commercial ELISA test kit for detection. And in order to identify the disease status of the infected animal. For the strain characterization, we have to do 2 parts that is antigenic variation for the R value, and the another one, the genomic variation by sequencing and prepare to the phylogenetic tree. This slide, when we have the FMD outbreak come to the farm, so the farmer inform the provincial veterinary officer, and after that, the provincial veterinary officer go to the farm to investigate and collect the sample. At the same time, the provincial officer will have to input data of the suspect cases and submit the sample to the lab. At the same time, they input data in the LIMS system, so that the authorized person in this system will know, and they can follow the test until the reports back to the farm. And the provincial officer must be receive about the sample collection training in order to understand the right condition to maintain about the quality of the sample before testing. In case of probank sample, that they want to check about the carrier and they want to check the condition of that animal before movement, they have to inform the lab to send us, and after that, lab send staff to support and work together with the veterinary in the field. For this slide, after the laboratory get the information from the LIMS system and get the sample from the field. For the antigen detection, so we divided sample into 3 parts. The one part for ELISA typing, the second one is viral isolation and molecular technique. And all of 3 parts we have to do at the same time. And in case of initial sample, original sample, if we get the serotyping by ELISA and also PCR, that should report to the field rapidly. And if not, is no virus detected by ELISA, we have to continue to perform viral isolation. For the viral isolation, we have to do at least 3 passes with the primary lamb kidney cell, and have to continue about the vaccine matching with the BHK21 cell line passage condition later. In case of molecular technique, we'll do the first one is one step multiplex RT-PCR and continue to do the sequencing to explain more detail about that sample. And after that, we have to report back to the LD and also to the farm. For the antibody detection at RL, so we have to do the test methods such as liquid phase blocking ELISA, or we call LP ELISA, to determine about the antibody titer to FMD serotype O, serotype A, and also ACR1. For non-structural or NSP tests, that we have to use 3 ABC NSP tests. That is a commercial test kit. To determine the antibody to the NSP or non-structural protein and the others. And the another point is differentiate between the vaccinated and also infected animal. When we know the serotype occur in the country, the next step, what we should do next, we want to know if the vaccine is still effective or suitable for control the FMD or not. And then we are going to do the vaccine matching. That the purpose of the vaccine matching in this case, to choose the most effective vaccine strain that will be effective in the outbreak of the FMD. And the next one, we would like to monitoring and ongoing to suitability of the vaccine maintained in the country in the vaccine antigen reserve. And the last one, to identify about the antigenic variation and to select if something wrong, we can know rapidly and we can prepare the new vaccine candidate at that time. For the FMD diagnostic technique in FMD Pak Chong, that we must to perform 3 test methods. That is, the first one is real-time PCR for identification of the FMD. The next one is multiplex RT-PCR for identify the serotype of the FMD, and the last one, we continue to do the DNA sequencing for characterization and present about the topotype of that FMD sample. That we are also following the principle as the first chart on the right side. In the past of the virus detection method, including ELISA typing to catch up the antigen, and also we have to do the PCR-based diagnosis consists of the multiplex and also RT-PCR. And of course, we have to do the virus isolation. That sample can continue to do about the vaccine matching, and if something wrong, that means like antigen variation, we can prepare that sample and continue to send to the vaccine production in the future. The laboratory diagnosis collect the important thing with the principal guideline to manage the sample, leading to the FMD investigation and FMD control in the country. So this slide, I would like to show some information about the FMD situation in Thailand 2021 and 2022. 2021, the majority is serotype O. That means the last year, only serotype O that we found that within India 2001E. And the end of 2021, and of course, in this year, 2022, we occur two serotype. The first one is serotype A, and the next one also serotype O. That I will show in the next slide. This slide show the phylogenetic tree of the serotype O that was collected in 2021 and this year. Blue is 2021, which totally is India 2001E, belonging Misa Topotype in Thailand, and the red color red color is 2022, which are 2 lineage. The most of the sample is the same 2021 is India 2001E. Just only one sample is like an incident is the Southeast Asia topotype. So this slide show about the phylogenetic tree of the serotype A that was collected in 2 years as well, and blue is 2021 that we collect at the end of the year and continue to continue to collect the sample. That show is the red color 2022, which totally is Southeast Asia 97 lineage belonging to Asia topotype in Thailand. This slide I would like to show about the phylogenetic tree of the serotype Asia 1 that we can get a sample from Myanmar 2017. So at the time we continue to perform about the ELISA typing, viral isolation, and molecular technique diagnosis, which show within the group. Group number 8 that is close to sample from the Sri Lanka that we have data in the laboratory. This slide show brief information on the FMD distribution in Thailand within 10 years. For serotype O occurs several lineages such as Southeast Asia topotype, Misa topotype, so it's Kate. So in case of serotype A, we found only one, that is the Asia topotype, Southeast 97 lineage. About the information of the vaccine matching, the summary of the vaccine study, the field strain sample gave a good match with the Thai vaccine strain that is 0189 vaccine strain. For the vaccine matching study, in case of serotype A in Thailand, consisting of 2 serotypes that we have, that is the Esponacon vaccine strain and the another one, Aeroburi vaccine strain. In 2021, the field strain gave a good match with Esponacon more than Aeroburi. But in this year, show both good match with the both of that vaccine, Esponacon and also Aeroburi. In addition to the sample submission for the FMD diagnosis will following the lab that we please to support the FMD diagnosis for the member country as possible according to corroborate case in case request and depend on the situation, and we will follow the sample submission regulation of the import permit and biosafety and biosecurity regulation in the country, and we are at the border of Thailand and after that we submit the sample at the border of Thailand and transport to the IL laboratory. So I think my presentation can give more information for everyone. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kinkan, for your presence. Thank you very much for your willingness to be our first speakers today. But wait until the end of the session because we still have a discussion session. Is that okay for you? Okay. Before Dr. Kinkan already give a really outstanding presentations on the diagnostic and collecting samples and also how to handle the samples. It's a really great opportunity for us from the technical aspect in the how to do the samples collection and to do the diagnostic. Again, thank you, Dr. Kinkan. Okay. Bapak Ibu semuanya, tadi paparan yang luar biasa terkait dengan technical aspek untuk koleksi sampel, kemudian diagnostik, kemudian bagaimana untuk proses-prosesnya yang cukup luar biasa sekali. Next, we'll have another outstanding speakers and also he is an expert on the FMD diagnostic and molecular analysis. We invited Dr. Donald King. Hello, Dr. Donald King. Are you with me now? Don? Dr. Don? Hello, Dr. Don? Donald? Dr. Donald? Hello, Dr. Donald. Hello, Dr. Donald. Oh, great. I'm just worried that you go somewhere else, but it's okay. Very good. Bapak Ibu semua, all the participants. Now we have Dr. Donald King from Fulbright who will deliver presentations on the molecular analysis and also FMD. So before we started, I will read his biography. Dr. Donald King, head of the Vesicular Disease Reference Laboratory Group and leads the Food and Agriculture Organizations, FAO, and he is the head of the FAO World Reference Laboratory for FMD or WRL FMD, and OI World Organization for Animal Health expert for foot and mouth disease and swine vesicular disease, and currently works at the Bright Institute in the United Kingdom and leads international reference surveillance activities undertaken by the Global OIE or FAO FMD Laboratory Network for FMD, as in the link, and conducts a research group in develop and applying new technologies and methods for the detection and characterization of important livestock disease agents. So here I think it's not just FMD and for other diseases too. And the mentioned methods underpin the routine diagnostic work on the reference laboratories and the Bright Institute, and are also used to monitor the global patterns of disease and to recognize new emerging viral lineages that pose threats to the UK and Europe. Bapak Ibu semuanya, ini luar biasa paparannya. Mohon perhatiannya apabila nanti ada pertanyaan, silakan ditulis di chat. Okay, Dr. Donald King, you have 30 minutes for presentation. Time is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind words. I think the organizers will have to do something to my permissions. I can't currently share my screen.
Okay, mohon dapat dibuka akses Dr. Donald untuk share screen, please. Can you do it now? No?
No, I'm not able to.
Bapak,
As the host has disabled that functionality.
Sorry about that. I'll double check. Wait a second. Bapak Ibu semuanya, mohon yang panitia mohon dapat dibuka akses untuk share screen-nya Dr. Donald. Apakah sudah? Halo. Bapak Ibu, Mas Adi. Bapak Ibu semuanya, panitia, apakah bisa dibuka aksesnya?
Sudah, silakan Pak Ari.
Oh, okay. I think it's already now. Can you double check again, Dr. Donald?
So I try that. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes, perfect. Very good.
Excellent. Apologies for those technical difficulties. And good afternoon, everyone. Very pleased to be asked to just say a few words about FMD diagnostics and molecular analysis in my presentation. And in a sense, the talk today is very much a sort of a practical perspective on some ideas that may be quite useful for diagnostics and detection of FMD cases in Indonesia. Thank you for the kind words of introduction, and just to say here representing the World Reference Laboratory for FMD, and very happy to provide any support that we can give to your cases that are occurring in Indonesia. So I suppose a theme perhaps of my presentation is to learn a little bit from outbreaks that have occurred previously. And unfortunately, very sad to hear the news about FMD cases that have occurred recently in Indonesia. In the UK, we have also had some experience of the challenges of tackling FMD outbreaks. And I use this slide just to highlight some newspaper cuttings from the epidemic which occurred in 2001 in the UK, which was very extensive, took a lot of efforts to control the disease, and was extremely costly to do so. And I suppose the purpose of showing this, of course, is that what we hope is we can learn from the lessons. Very pleased that you also had a co-presenter today from Miyazaki from Japan, Professor Okabayashi, who I think gave a very nice overview of some of the challenges and some of the lessons that are learned from controlling outbreaks in Japan. And I will say something a little bit from a UK perspective, and also from the experience that we have as the World Reference Laboratory for FMD. So the purpose of the presentation is really to talk about some practical issues and to think particularly about FMD diagnostic methods, as well as methods that can be used to characterize and analyze the sequences. And the basic message here, I think, and perhaps the key message from the presentation is one of the big lessons from FMD outbreaks where they have occurred elsewhere in the world, is that rapid confirmation of suspect cases is really critical here. And so any delays in the time that's taken for the confirmation of cases and to really understand where the disease is present increases your costs, increases the size of the outbreak, and makes the whole control of the cases much more complex. And here on the right-hand side of the slide, just highlight a couple of review articles, both in the Nature and Science publications, which really were quite critical reviews of the UK response to the 2001 epidemic. And I think if there are people on the call today who are in similar positions in the Indonesian government, I mean, you really advise you to look at some of these lessons to see whether you can learn any points that are very relevant for your current difficulties. So I suppose when we're thinking specifically about diagnostic methods, there's some key diagnostic questions which I'll try to cover within the presentation. And the first of those questions is when an animal presents with clinical signs that are suspicious of FMD, can we quickly confirm that this case truly does represent an FMD case? And so there are a number of virological methods that are used to identify FMD virus that's present in a range of clinical samples. And I'll explain a little bit about some of the tests that can be used for that purpose. If the case is positive, then of course there are secondary questions that relate to that. One is, of course, a really important question: what is the viral serotype? And then once you, of course, now have a series of outbreaks in Indonesia, a big question, important question is how do these cases, and particularly any new cases that are detected, how do they connect to each other? And can we use the laboratory data to help us understand the underlying transmission processes that are occurring between farms and villages? I won't say very much about FMD surveillance because I don't have a lot of time today, but another key question is beyond testing clinical cases, there will be also work undertaken using probably serosurveillance to look for FMD exposure in susceptible animals. And in that space, one of the key questions is are we missing any cases? And is there any evidence for undisclosed infection in any of the animals that are sampled for serosurveillance? And I'll just very quickly at the end of my presentation explain how that method might be used. So I think Dr. King Khan already introduced this idea of the diagnostic windows for FMD, and this is a really important point, I think, that needs to be clearly understood when diagnostic tests are used. Because of course, if the wrong samples are collected, or samples are collected at the wrong phases of the clinical cycle in an animal, you can't expect that the results will generate any useful information. And so I just use perhaps a slightly different way of presenting this from Dr. King Khan's presentation, but again, to highlight where the diagnostic windows are present for FMD. And so one area where diagnostic tests are very useful, of course, is confirming that the clinical signs that are observed in animals are due in part due to or due totally caused by FMD virus that's present in the samples. And here, of course, clinical lesions, swab samples, and a range of clinical samples from the affected animals are very helpful. And the window of infection is quite wide here. So you get after an incubation period that I think Dr. Vosloo explained in her presentation, after some period of incubation, the animals will present with clinical disease, and the lesions will be present in the animals for maybe a week or so. And I mean, in that sense, any of the samples that are collected from those clinical lesions can be tested for FMD virus. So here you're trying to rapidly confirm the presence of virus in the clinical sites. There's also an area of work which may or may not be of interest to colleagues in Indonesia, where if you're moving animals or you have strong suspicion that certain herds or villages may be infected with FMD, but there's no overt clinical cases being detected, you may want to look for preclinical surveillance in animals. And here, testing of blood can be very helpful. And certainly in the UK, in outbreaks we've had previously in the UK, this has been very useful. You have to remember for FMD that the viremic phase is very short. So in contrast to a number of other viral diseases, the viremic phase for FMD can be very short, and as short as maybe only a week. So beyond that week period, there's no point in testing blood samples for FMD virus. And then, of course, the other window that is widely exploited for for FMD diagnostics is the antibody window. And this is the idea that after exposure and after infection with the virus, the animals will generate an FMD specific response, which can be detected with immunoassay type methods. So just briefly to talk about some of the frontline tests that are available and described in the OAE manual. And I think when we're thinking about doing routine diagnostics for statutory diseases such as FMD, we need to be making sure that the methods that we use are well defined and equivalent to the international standards. And the OAE manual is very specific about the particular methods that can be used for FMD diagnostics. And here for FMD, there are a number of different test technologies that can be used for virology. Many reference laboratories will still use virus isolation. This is a highly sensitive method and is widely accepted, if you like, as the gold standard method for FMD diagnostics. But although it's very sensitive, it can be quite slow, and the presentation of cytopathic effect in the cell cultures needs to be confirmed by another method. The other method that's widely used by laboratories is antigen ELISA. This is a very rapid or relatively rapid method, but it's not very analytically sensitive and is only useful for certain sample types. And I think it's fair to say that in common with many other human and animal diseases, now molecular diagnostics using real-time PCR is now recognized to be an extremely useful frontline test for FMD diagnostics. So FMD real-time PCRs are now widely used within the reference laboratory family. And these are rapid tests with high diagnostic and analytical sensitivity. But I suppose the message here is, and perhaps linking a little bit to some of the comments in the other presentations, I think it's important that colleagues in Indonesia consider maintaining some degree of redundancy. So if you rely solely on one test technology, perhaps, and we have some experience of this, you may be surprised when the results do not necessarily fit the picture that you expect. So having different test technologies can be quite useful for these purposes. So if we're just considering really a molecular approach, and I suspect that for these cases that we're describing here or considering here in Indonesia, we're thinking mainly about using real-time PCR as a frontline diagnostic method. And as I said, the methods are widely described in the OAE manual, and they use and target highly conserved regions of the FMD genome. So these are pan-serotypic tests that are well described and well validated and target the 5' UTR and the 3D regions of the genome. And PCR, of course, is a very useful method. It's very suitable to test a wide range of different sample types that might be received from field cases. So not only tissue samples, but serum samples, swab samples, as well as probank samples as well. But I think it's important to reflect on a number of important considerations. And again, this doesn't relate specifically to FMD diagnostics, but relates more broadly to using PCR to inform or confirm or deny clinical spectrum of clinical cases. And of course, one widely recognized difficulty with FMD is that it's a highly sensitive method and is very subject to cross-contamination. And we see this a lot certainly within the veterinary field. And I think if I was going to provide some advice to colleagues in Indonesia, if you're going to use PCR, I'd say you need to ensure you adopt systems that minimize as well as monitor any cross-contamination that may occur within the samples. And that will rule out the possibility of false positives. And then, of course, for PCR, there can sometimes be difficulties with the presence of PCR inhibitors in the nucleic acid preparations. And so also thinking about whether you need to adopt a process to monitor those inhibitory methods, substances in the samples as well. And if you like, the top of the slide here just reminds you really that if you're doing PCR, you need to segregate the different activities into the different spaces to minimize this cross-contamination. And if you don't do this, our experience is you're going to find a lot of false positives. The data at the bottom of the slide is data from cases of FMD that occurred in the UK in 2007, and highlighting that if you do put together a good process to handle these samples, then you can actually end up with a test that has quite high specificity. So the only other thing to say very briefly here is, of course, I've talked here about frontline diagnostic tests for FMD. PCR is also very, can be easily manipulated to target other regions of the FMD genome. And here, there are now a range of FMD assays that are available to detect different viral lineages. So if you're interested in perhaps filling the gap between virus detection and sequencing, there are opportunities to use lineage-specific PCR assays. And for the Asian region, there are a number of assays that have now been developed, not only by ourselves at the WRL, but also colleagues in Korea, as well as in China, that might be suitable for your use here to quickly identify the serotype and lineage of the sample that might be present in the clinical samples. And then the other thing to mention very briefly, and again, don't have any time to really say a huge amount about this more now, is there's also a number of molecular mobile formats that are being applied and developed and are continuously being developed for livestock diseases. And in some respects, not only the pan-serotypic assay, but also these type-specific assays can be deployed onto these mobile PCR platforms if you're interested in taking the test technologies perhaps into a more remote part of your country, which is more divorced from the central support from the laboratories. And here again, I just highlight a couple of papers from our laboratory that highlights the utility of these assays. I'm going to say something very briefly about mobile tests, but not molecular mobile tests, but here just to say something about lateral flow tests. And again, many of you will be familiar with this test technology. Of course, we're now using it widely for COVID diagnostics for ourselves. But here, a number of laboratories and projects have developed lateral flow devices for FMD diagnostics. And these are very simple and rapid tests that can quickly identify the presence of FMD virus in certain sample types. The tests that are available at the moment are either pan-serotypic or even type-specific. And so there are tests available that will differentiate between serotypes OA and Asia1, for example, that might be very useful for your purposes. And in basic messages, this is an immunoassay very similar to the antigen detection immunoassay that's used in the laboratory. And the performance of these assays is broadly the same. So it's not a test with high analytical sensitivity, but if it's a test that you just very quickly want to confirm or rule out virus from clinical samples, then it could be useful for your purposes. And here I highlight a couple of companies from which you can access these devices. The other thing to say about lateral flow devices is not only are they useful for in situ testing, for local testing, but they can also be quite a useful mechanism to collect samples for downstream laboratory analysis. And we've completed recently some work in Africa to show that FMD lateral flow devices can quickly identify the presence of virus in the field, but those devices can also be sent back to the laboratory. We can use nucleic acid recovered from those lateral flow devices to confirm the cases by PCR, to do sequencing, and also through some of the tricks of transfection is actually recover live FMD virus from these samples if it's needed. And so this is perhaps another option that could be considered in Indonesia if you want to triage samples and move samples most effectively to the laboratory for analysis. So now for the next section of the talk, just to say something about sequencing. Hopefully we're all clear, I think, why we're trying to sequence FMD viruses. We heard from Dr. Voslo, within Southeast Asia, we know there are multiple viral lineages present, and we need to quickly identify which of the viral lineages is present and causing the outbreaks that we're seeing in the field. And so viral sequence data is clearly really important there. And then the other big question that is often asked, and I'm sure is starting to be asked in Indonesia, is how is the virus being spread within the country, and what is the source of the outbreak and the introduction of the virus into the country. And again, sequence data can be very useful for that purpose. And so just to remind you, this is a cartoon that just reminds you of the genomic organization of FMD, very cartoon format with the single polyprotein encoding all the viral proteins. And for diagnostic purposes, as I said earlier, we have these highly conserved pan-serotypic diagnostic regions in the 5' UTR in the internal ribosomal entry site in the IRES, as well as in the 3D region in the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, which are highly conserved and suitable for pan-serotypic diagnostics. But for sequencing, of course, we don't want those conserved regions. We want the more variable regions. And so here we largely target the VP1 region. And this is certainly used for initial isolate characterization. And if you're interested, we have a number of protocols and publications that could be useful for your purpose to adopt those methods in different laboratories in Indonesia. So the VP1 method, of course, is the frontline method that is used to identify and confirm the identity of a strain. But I think when you're considering generating evidence and knowledge that helps you understand the way that the virus is being spread within a country, VP1 data is not necessarily useful for that purpose because it's a relatively short chunk of the genome and doesn't give you the required resolution to really look at the different viruses that might be present on different farms. And so we've, with other colleagues, have pioneered recently alternative methods, and these are using full genome sequencing methods, which can very quickly recover high resolution data, which can be extremely useful in national control policies. And here you have the resolution to reconstruct the connectivity that exists between farms. So this can help you understand the routes of transmission when they're occurring between farms and villages, and also provides a data set that's very distinct to perhaps the conventional epidemiological contact tracing that's often undertaken in outbreaks. We have, and again, if you're interested, there's a publication highlighted at the bottom of the slide. The data can also be very useful to help you understand whether there are any missing links in the transmission chain. And certainly we have used this in the UK for this purpose, and helps you understand whether or not you're truly sampling all of the FMD outbreaks that are occurring. And then the other area where sequence data and full genome sequence data can be quite helpful is if you're going through, excuse me, cleansing and disinfecting to try to remove the virus from a farm, and then you repopulate the farm with susceptible animals. If you get subsequent outbreaks on those farms, the sequence data can help you understand whether the cleansing and disinfectant is failing, or whether you've got a new introduction of the virus from a different source. So just to say something very, very briefly, because of course the sequencing area is moving very quickly. And here I just introduce a new sequencing technology, which many of you may already be aware of, which is the MinION sequencing approach that has been developed by Oxford Nanopore in the UK. And this is a very rapid sequencing method that can be used for full genome sequencing. And you can see really on the right-hand slide at the top, the sequencing equipment is very small. And so you don't need expensive sequencing equipment to undertake this work. And really the sort of equipment that you need is relatively modest and is relatively achievable for most laboratory environments. And so using this MinION sequencing method might be an approach that you can very quickly get full genomic data from the different cases as they're occurring in different parts of Indonesia. And at the moment, within the WRL, and I know other colleagues elsewhere have also developed similar protocols for using the MinION. We've developed pans of primers, pools of pan-specific primers, which can amplify the genome in overlapping fragments. And we've actually, since the cases have been identified in Indonesia, we've checked and can confirm that this method will probably work against the India 2001 E lineage, which is the causative strain as we understand it in Indonesia. And so if you're interested, we'd be very happy to follow up further discussions to provide assistance to try and set these methods up in Indonesia. And it would be a good starting place and a good good testing place for this new technology. So just at the end of the presentation, say something very briefly about serological assays. So serological assays, and I think Dr. Kinkana also mentioned this in her presentation, serological assays are an important component of the work we do in the reference centers. Here we're detecting FMD-specific antibody responses. And compared to virology tests, these are often recognized to be much easier to perform at scale. So you can do a lot of the serological tests. And as I said earlier, these tests can be used to look for prior evidence of FMD infection in the absence of clinical signs. They can also be very useful if we're going to think about adopting vaccines in Indonesia. serological tests can also be used to assess vaccine coverage and responses in the vaccinated animals. And quite critically, thinking about FMD freedom, perhaps we're still a little bit away from that in terms of where we are in the process for Indonesia, but these are important tools that monitor FMD infection in the national herd and provide the data that's so critical to demonstrate disease freedom to the OIE. And so these tests can be used to detect FMD antibodies against the non-structural proteins, where these are highly conserved parts of the viral genome and or highly conserved viral proteins. So you only need a single test to test all the serotypes. And of course, the other benefit of the NSP tests is they can often be used to detect infected animals in the vaccinated population. And the structural protein tests, of course, are targeting the parts of the viral capsid, which are specific for each serotype. So you need a different test for each of the viral serotypes. And in case it was useful, I put together just a very simple table which highlighted some of the disadvantages and advantages of these tests. I'm not going to go through all of this in the presentation today, but just to say that the non-structural protein tests, as well as some of the commercially available assays that in the SPCE format, are very easy, simple to perform, and can be performed outside of containment, and really do offer a lot of options for the serosurveillance and monitoring of infection in your herds. So just to summarize what I've said, I think in the presentation, I want to reiterate, of course, is the laboratories within the OIE FAO reference laboratory network are here to provide you with support. We can provide you with technical support, as well as the scope to actually confirm any of the observations and testing that you're doing in your laboratories. You can send samples to us for further testing. And here, of course, is just to remind you, of course, and perhaps to remind the field teams, is sample submissions is really critical here. Without the samples, the laboratories are completely blind with respect to what's going on in the field. And if you need any further help, please do email me, and I can try to point you in the right direction about where you can get further advice. We already just very briefly heard, I think, in one of the earlier presentations about vaccine matching. A work of the reference laboratory will also, once field samples are received from Indonesia, will undertake vaccine matching, and that will help confirm and help in the selection of a vaccine for use. And then the other area, of course, that the reference laboratories can help you is if you're going to adopt a vaccination campaign, you're going to need to put together procedures to monitor the vaccinated animals and the coverage in your populations. And again, the reference laboratories can provide you with support for those activities. So thank you for your attention. I use this slide just to highlight where you can find a lot of further information about the work we do in the World Reference Laboratory. We have a website where all of our reports are produced, as well as a quarterly and an annual report of the network, which defines some of the big challenges globally relating to FMD. So thank you for your attention, and I'm very happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Donald King. I think we'll take your offer regarding to the support, whether it's the potential to get the procedure and the standard operating procedure for the detections and diagnostic. It will be help us. I think that's really great presentations, and there are a lot of excellent informations that will support us in order to strengthen our capacity for the diagnostic test. So if we contact you further, that will be okay, Dr. Donald. Sure, there. Thank you very much. So that again, thank you very much, Dr. Donald. Bapak Ibu semuanya, tadi paparan luar biasa sekali dari Donald King dari Bright Institute. Beliau adalah reference lab untuk FMD di dunia. Dan ini tadi tawaran beliau terkait dengan kegiatan-kegiatan yang mendukung upaya kita dalam kontrol FMD, itu mungkin bisa kita pergunakan dengan sebaik-baiknya. Bapak, Ibu, saya menyapa terkait dengan, mohon tadi paparannya luar biasa. Apabila ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan, silakan diisi di kolom chat. Okay, thank you, Dr. Donald, again, but wait until the end of the sessions. We will have a discussion session after this. So next will be another speakers. That is just the additions for the informations regarding the potential research about FMD in Indonesia. On the next presenter will be myself. So for the next speaker will be myself. I am Harimurti Nuraji here. I will deliver a short presentations about the potential research that can be conducted regarding to the FMD. And before there is a presentations from Dr. Agus Wiono regarding to the recommendations of the policy analysis of the FMD in Indonesia. And it say in the end of the recommendations that the research on FMD is in Indonesia is a must, need to be conducted in order to support the control of FMD in Indonesia. Again, in the recommendations of Pak Agus said that this is not just the responsibility of the government and the farmers, but this is the responsibility for all of us. We have to control the FMD in Indonesia. We need to work together, strengthen our collaborations and support each other in order to control FMD in Indonesia. So I share the presentations. So regarding to the FMD research and development here, so this is starting in 1897. This guy called the Whitfrost in Berlin in 1897 reported the causal agent of FMD as a virus. This was the first demonstrations that an animal disease could be caused by a virus. This started when the Prussian government was highly interested in effectively combating FMD. In 1897, Loeffler was appointed by the Ministry of Cultural Affairs to the newly established Commission for Exploring the Disease. So for this, a prize of 3,000 Reichsmark for the persons who identified and, if possible, isolated the contagious matter causing FMD and demonstrated its effectiveness by means of decisive experiments on animals. So the research on FMD started in 1897, although it has been reported the case in 1500. Then the start research on the disease started by 1897 by Loeffler and also Frost. So after that, this is the sequence of the research here. This is the timeline from 1898, Loeffler and Frost, FMD filterable agent. And then Waldman and Pape in 1920, kinetic model. And 1922-26, the serotyping, Farley and Kerr and Waldman. And virus growth in tank epithelium by Frankel, and PHK suspension cell culture grow by Kopstick. And then 1974, there is research on the BAI inactivated vaccine by Behnemann, and also ELISA on the primary diagnosis of FMD have et al. In 1984, sequence-based subtyping, Beck and Stromer in 1987, RT-PCR diagnosis in 1990s, and 2002, the detection of all 7 serotypes of FMD by real time, and then by Red et al. So FMD research is defined as the creation of new knowledge and on the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way, so as to generate new concepts, methodologies, and understanding, or to study a subject in detail, especially in order to discover new information or reach a new understanding. For the research, there are two types, which are a basic research, also known as a fundamental or pure research science, since it is mainly concerned with the improvement of scientific knowledge, and applied research, which focuses on the application of science principles on practical difficulties as well as enhancing innovations. In terms of the food and mood disease, these two research complement each other, support each other in order to find a new and creative way, so as generating a new concept, methodologies, and understanding. So for the FMD research, there are also epidemiological research which concern with describing and explaining the occurrence of disease in populations. And the aims of epidemiological research here are to describe the health status of population by enumerating the occurrence of diseases, obtaining the relative frequencies within groups and identifying trends, explaining the cause of diseases, predict the number of disease occurrence and distribution in population, and control, prevent, eradicate diseases, prolong life, and improve health status. So these are the aims of the epidemiological research. So the FMD research here, there are two output or objective. The first, one is the disease informations to gather or understanding the FMD virus or disease that occur in the environment. And the second, which is to develop the technology in order to do the FMD diagnostic test development. So for this, there are many different things that can be created for the diagnostic tools, methods, and also principles. And the third will be the vaccine development for the FMD vaccine development, FMD vaccine matching. So there will be the vaccines that created and have the high efficacy. And the fourth will be disease modeling from the FMD or foot-mouth disease modeling. So we'll talk one by one. For the FMD research, this is the example of the disease informations. And these are the paper that I get from the presenter here, Wilna Foslo, and then King Khan, and then also Dr. Donald King. So this is all the information they gather from the research that been conducted from the FMD. As previously mentioned on the presentations by the previous speakers from Dr. Wilna Foslo, and then Dr. King Khan, Dr. Donald King, and also Dr. Agus, that these information are required. So in order to get this, as mentioned by Dr. Wilna, that we have to gather all the samples. And this will give very important information to understand the character of the virus. And this also will help to understand whether it's possible to do the vaccination and whether the vaccine that we use is effective against those particular viruses. And this is the information of the research that conducted, I think around 1986 or 3, on the previous outbreak of FMD in Indonesia. These photos from Dr. Ajit. He already passed away, and he did a lot of great works on the FMD at that time to support the government to control the FMD disease in Indonesia. This is kind of examples of the disease research that has been conducted at that time. So Pak Ajit and the team, they observed the clinical signs of the FMD in the Balinese cattle that infected by the FMD virus or Java 83. And they measured the temperature of the 3 cattle that susceptible after being infected with FMD virus. So as you can see here, they are increasing the temperatures from day 2 and then decreasing in around a peak in day 2 and then decreasing day 3 and then decrease into normal in day 7. This kind of example, the research is required to understand the virus that currently circulating in Indonesia. This the FMD research and the technology development. This also work of the presenters here from Dr. Wilna and also Dr. Donald King on the development of chemical inactivation of foot and mouth disease virus in bovine tongue epithelium for safe transport and downstream processing. This is really good information for all of us. What is how to inactivate the virus using the chemical. So this is give information to us if you want to process the samples and for saving the transport and downstream processing. This also the result of the example of the research conducted by Dr. Donald King et al. Detections of foot and mouth disease virus in milk samples. This also give us information to do the PCR. And these two, the study that we conducted in Indonesia for evaluations, the procedure for the sample preparations, and for developing the synthetic control procedure. And this is the vaccine development, the example of the research that conducted for the vaccine development. This is conducted by Dr. Wilna, where we can ask more in detail about that. The evaluation of different adjuvants and foot and mouth disease vaccine contain all the said serotypes. And this one is Dr. Wilna also from the heterogeneous emergency foot and mouth disease vaccines, Malaysia 97 and R2 to Iraq 964 offer good protections against heterogeneous challenge with the variant serotype Asia 97 lineage virus. This information will support us in order to get better understanding on how to control the virus in Indonesia. Bapak Ibu semuanya yang saya hormati, the participants, this is the examples of what kind of informations that we require during the outbreak of FMD. These results of the monitoring of the immunity against the FMD in 1985 and 1986. So these were the serum from many different areas, many different locations in Indonesia, and there are the data there and the number of the samples, and at the time the vaccines that use, the type of the vaccine they use, and the percentage of the titer of the animals, and they separated into 3 from negative, low, and also protective, as you can see here. And then there are also other things that that were the results of the test. And as you can see here, there are protectivity of this the sera showing quite high protectivity, around 91.6%, from 70 to I think the higher one, the highest was 96.8%. This is the informations that we required during the FMD outbreak in Indonesia. And also these are the distribution of the serum titers in vaccinated animals from the 1st year, 2nd year, and the 3rd year, from dairy cattle, dirt cattle, and buffalo. These are the type of the titer that can be observed in the cattle and buffalo during the vaccination period from the first and second and third year. And this is the disease modeling. This is the system dynamic modeling, which showing how to control the FMD and what kind of intervention that can be implemented during the outbreak time. This is an interregional system dynamic model of animal disease control application to food and mouth disease in the southern corner of South Africa. This type of disease with the system dynamic modeling we can use to do study in Indonesia. So what next? We require to do epidemiological research on FMD in Indonesia, development of rapid diagnostic assay for FMD in Indonesia, but saying that as Dr. Donald King mentioned about the lateral flow device, that they do the test and also we can do the PCR from the lateral flow device. And then the vaccine development, vaccine program development, which include the efficacy study, detection, isolation, and characterization of FMD virus in Indonesia. It is must. Molecular analysis that will support the activity of the controlling the FMD outbreak in Indonesia, development of FMD diagnostic tests, and dissemination information of research. We need to strengthen our collaborations with all the stakeholders, all the sectors in Indonesia in order to control FMD in Indonesia. Okay, again, thank you very much for your attention. So this is the end of the presentation session. So after this, we still have a time to probably we can do discussion here. There are lots of questions in the chat, but as we can see that there are some questions that have been answered by Dr. Wilna, Dr. Donald, and Dr. Professor Tamaki, and then we can do a discussion session here. So for the first, probably there are 3 participants that want to the online discussion here. Any participants who want to ask directly to all the speakers today? Bapak Ibu semuanya, apakah ada yang ingin menanyakan terkait dengan presentasi kali ini? Baik, Bapak Ibu semuanya, there are many questions from the pre-questions registration form. There are questions for Dr. Wina Foso, Kapayasi, Dr. Agus Wiono, Dr. Kingkan, Dr. Donald King. For the Dr. Wilna, what is the serotype of FMD recently spread in Indonesia? I think I already mentioned. How come the virus rapidly spread among animals in most of developing countries? So you can answer this directly, Dr. Wilna.
Yes, so it's most likely, I did say in my presentation that when animals have not been vaccinated, they have absolutely no immunity to the disease, then of course it is likely that it will spread very fast because they are all fully susceptible to the virus. So that's the one reason. But of course, movement control is really important. So normally when we don't have an outbreak, animals are moving around, and once we know that there's an outbreak and we then stop the movement of animals, that will also help to stop the spread of the virus. And Dr. King said in his talk that, the sooner one actually identifies the virus, the better. So just to give a little bit of an example, so if we identify an introduction immediately on the day that it was introduced, we're not really going to have an outbreak because there will be no movement. We see the infected animal and we eliminate the disease that way. But if the disease had been around for a while before we realize that it's there, and we then institute movement controls, by that stage, the disease had spread quite widely. So there's two things, and it's not just in developing countries, it's in all countries that are disease-free, a fully susceptible population, and then movement controls that may be instituted after the virus had been around for a long time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wilna. Next question for Prof. Okabayashi. Is it possible to develop a suitable vaccine for FMD in Indonesia? Is this the imported vaccine give enough protections for Indonesian local infected cattle?
Hello, thank you very much for question. So I think that scientifically it is possible to develop the suitable vaccine for FMD in Indonesia if Indonesia side can decide detailed information, characterization of the FMD virus endemic in Indonesia. And of course, imported vaccine also had enough protection level, because in Miyazaki cases also, we also use the vaccine for the Manisa. So I think that it is possible, but I want to ask another expert for the FMD, Dr. Donald King or the King Sensei, to answer it, if possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Tamaki. Bapak Ibu, tadi sudah jelas ya jawabannya terkait dengan is it possible to develop a suitable vaccine of FMD, is it the imported vaccine, sudah dijawab dengan sangat jelas oleh Prof. Okabayashi. Untuk Dr. Agus Wiono, how is the regulation to handle the animal and its product in Idul Adha moment?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, as I said before, the combination of vaccination, movement control, and stamping out in certain areas is should be mapped. Should be mapped. So we have to have profiling or mapping in each area, whether it's red, yellow, or green, and then the movement is based on that kind of profiling. Jadi nanti kalau itu ada, kalau from itu, even though it's vaccinated, it's cannot move to an area where unvaccinated. In terms of policy making, there will be area with vaccination, free with vaccination, and then area free with non-vaccination. Begitu. Jadi tetap bebas tanpa vaksinasi Indonesia. Begitu ada daerah yang bebas dengan vaksinasi. Itu bebas, statusnya berbeda. Mudah-mudahan itu bisa kita pertahankan. Begitu ya. Jadi talking about Idul Adha, talking about movement control. Jadi tentang vaksinnya, mudah-mudahan ada vaksin-vaksin dalam kondisi darurat ini. Kebetulan saya mengikuti rapat di Komisi Obat Hewan. Mudah-mudahan ada solusi dalam waktu ya tidak terlalu lama, begitulah ya. Saya tidak berbicara hari, minggu atau apa, tapi ada solusi yang secara teknis serotipiknya bisa dipertanggungjawabkan dari vaksin matchingnya, dan availability-nya ada, karena tidak mudah untuk mendapatkan vaksin dalam kondisi seperti saat ini. Begitu, mudah-mudahan bisa menjawab pertanyaan tadi. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Agus. That's a really great answer. Semoga jelas ya jawabannya, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Sepertinya tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Dr. Agus terkait dengan policy kebijakan yang terkait dengan handle the animal and its product di Idul Adha, pada Idul Adha yang akan datang ini. Terima kasih Pak Agus. Selanjutnya untuk Dr. King Khan, it is common to find slaughtering activity conducted by the owner outside the slaughterhouse. How is the procedure for slaughtering animal which show clinical sign of FMD and the handling procedure for the waste? Dr. King Khan?
Dr. Hari, she just posted a message saying that she can't hear. That she is just trying to do something to hear the question.
Oh, okay. Yep. So from the question, it is common to find a slaughtering activity conducted by the owner outside the slaughterhouse. How is the procedure for slaughtering animal which show clinical sign of FMD and the handling procedure from the waste? Dr. Kinkan, do you hear me?
Maybe Dr. Hari, she still can't hear. Maybe if we move on to the next question.
Okay, sure.
She's trying to get back in, I just saw.
All right, okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Wilner. Dr. Donald, what is the gold standard for the FMD detections?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Hopefully you can hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, it's quite a widely discussed topic, I think, about the relative performance of the different diagnostic tests that are used for FMD. I mean, I think historically, I think people see that virus isolation is the gold standard because that provides you with an isolate from which you can do a lot of further studies. So, I mean, certainly, even in the UK, if we have an FMD outbreak, the chief revenue officer in the UK usually likes to see an isolate because it gives her confidence that it really is FMD and there isn't any doubt about the case. But it's perhaps not so important to worry about which test is the gold standard. It's more important to understand the relative performance and the utilities of the test. And I'd say in that space, it's also important to recognize that a test that's when it's performed in different laboratories may not necessarily be the same. And so a large component of work that we do within the reference laboratory networks is to demonstrate equivalence between test results when they're generated at one site and another site, even with the same test. And I'd say if in Indonesia, you're anticipating that you will use more than one laboratory to provide support to these cases, then I think it could be quite important to consider whether or not you need to do some form of interlaboratory comparison between the methods when they're used in those different places, just again to demonstrate that the tests are properly optimized and broadly giving you the same results. Otherwise, I mean, the worst case scenario, of course, is one lab is not performing very well. They test the samples with the same assays, but their results are not trustable at all. And I'm not saying that's the case, but it can be quite an important point. And a lot of national laboratories and international laboratories will participate in these proficiency testing schemes to demonstrate equivalence. Over.
Oke, thank you, Dr. Donald. Bapak Ibu semuanya, tadi jelas sekali ya terkait dengan penjelasan the FMD detections adalah potensial ini nanti untuk laboratorium network dan melakukan uji banding antar laboratorium, harmonisasi terkait dengan pengujian untuk melihat seberapa cocok hasil yang dihasilkan dari setiap pengujian tersebut. Baik, for the question for myself, it is what type of collaborations? There are many collaborations that can be conducted. We can collaborate with the other institutions overseas as well, such as from CSIRO and also from the Fulbright Institute and also from the CADIC, from the PECHONG and also from the other sectors in Indonesia. And this will give us opportunity at least to strengthen our collaborations in the FMD control. This will cover all the aspects, not just from the research and from the diagnosis, and then from the control aspect. And this needs to be conducted with the collaborations which can strengthen the control of the FMD eradication in Indonesia. So I think I think if we want to discuss this long, it will take a long time. I think this is really interesting information that we discuss here. And then there are potential questions that may be raised during this presentation, but I think we also know we already 15 minutes late. for these sessions, then probably we need to invite 3 participants to ask directly using this webinar. I mean, are there any participants that want to directly ask to all the presenters here? Mas Zakarias? Mas Zakarias Surakel, ya. Singkat, padat, jelas ya, Mas.
Baik, biar lebih singkat, Pak Hari, saya bisa tanya dalam bahasa Indonesia, Pak?
Monggo, monggo.
Nanti mohon dibantu ya, Pak.
Yes.
Jadi pertanyaan saya adalah, apa namanya, kan kita tahu yang kasus di Indonesia terjadi begitu diumumkan sudah melibatkan ribuan ternak dan di 4 daerah sekaligus yang FMD ini. Nah, apa namanya? Saya mau tanya ke Profesor King yang dari FAO. Adakah catatan khusus dari Profesor King tentang rapid confirmation yang tadi dituturkan dalam presentasi itu dalam kasus di Indonesia ini? Apakah rapid confirmation tadi kan disebutkan sangat mutlak? Apakah tidak berjalan atau memang hal yang wajar bahwa FMD ini begitu ditemukan sudah banyak ribuan hewan di banyak daerah sekaligus?
Oke.
Nah, itu sekalian ke Profesor yang dari Jepang, Pak Ari. Dari
Halo. 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 Mas Zakarias. So we're waiting. Oke. Dengar suara saya? Putus-putus, Mas. Baik, yang pertama dulu kali ya. Oh, okay. I think we have a problem the internet connections here. Dr. Donald King, there is a question for you regarding to the rapid confirmations. You mentioned before that the rapid confirmation is must, and with the situation in Indonesia, with the current outbreak that now spreads in many different areas in Indonesia, what is your opinion? Is this the rapid confirmations is not working in Indonesia, or it's normal for the outbreak of FMD, where the rapid confirmations is normally led after the clinical signs is detected? Dr. Donald?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not fully briefed of the latest situation regarding the outbreaks in Indonesia, but if I understand correctly, there are outbreaks on at least 2 of the different islands, and maybe 3 or 4 of the islands from what I hear from the popular press. And I suppose the question would be, and it links a little bit to the point I think Dr. Vosloo already mentioned earlier, which is FMD will spread very quickly. It will always exploit any pathways to move along with the movements of animals and animal products. And in a sense, now that this has happened, I mean, there will be time in the future perhaps to review what the lessons are from the particular spread of these cases. But the key message is, I think, that based on the situation as it exists now, I think my recommendation is that there should be strong connectivity between the field teams that are recognizing the cases and getting samples sent either to national, regional or international laboratories to provide support to confirm that these cases are FMD is really critical. And there's quite a big question, which is, do these cases represent, are they all linked, or are they, which is perhaps the expectation, But a worst case scenario might be, of course, is that they're not linked at all, and they may represent different events, and at worst case they could be caused by different serotypes. So I think the message is to try to work in a systematic way to try to address some of these questions, to properly understand what you're being presented with now as it exists in the field, and to try to put the resources in place to try to answer some of these key questions. Over.
Oke, thank you Dr. Donald. Jadi gitu ya Mas Rakil ya jawabannya Pak Donald, bahwasanya memang kondisi seperti ini itu butuh pemahaman terkait dengan kejadian-kejadian yang ada di Indonesia. Next, one more I think, Pak Samsul Bahri. Monggo Pak Samsul.
Thank you very much.
Prof. Samsul ini.
Silakan,
Prof.
Oh iya, ada.
No, I think I would like to ask about, as Dr. Don King mentioned, that in UK that's all has outbreak FMD in 2001, and maybe in many other country, I think. Now, we have to share the experience in other country, how they eradicate or they control the FMD outbreak. Of course, because in Indonesia, I think the situation and condition also different. Yeah, as you know that in Indonesia since 1990. We free of FMD disease, but this outbreak still rise in April, early of April, or maybe the end of March. And also in Indonesia, because the geographically, and economically, and other situation, and very maybe quite different with the UK or maybe in other country. So how we can help Indonesia to eradicate FMD by using different way, different method, different. I think Pak Hari, secara garis besarnya saya kira mungkin seperti itu. Mungkin Pak Hari bisa nangkep ya yang saya jelaskan tadi.
Saya tahu ya.
Ya kan, kita kan berbeda sekali nih situasi kondisinya, ya kan? Ya, mereka relatif lebih maju, lebih apa? Mungkin sistem apa namanya itu koordinasinya juga sangat kuat ya, sehingga bagaimana pengalaman mereka itu bisa diimplementasikan dengan kondisi di kita, termasuk yang apa namanya otonomi yang dikhawatirkan koordinasinya apa namanya susah ya, koordinasi dari atas sampai ke daerah itu agak susah. Nah ini dikombinasikan saran-saran mereka seperti apa. Tadi Pak Agus di dalam kebijakannya sudah ada juga sebenarnya, tetapi dirangkum, maksud saya dirangkum untuk bisa diimplementasikan secara apa namanya, secara ya supaya bisa dengan cepat lah gitu. Sebab kalau tidak, saya kira kalau dibiarkan dengan cara yang ada, ya saya kira akan lama sekali ini pemberantasan FMD di Indonesia ini. Saya kira itu intinya, mungkin Pak Ari bisa tambahkan ringkas dalam bahasa Inggris.
Siap, terima kasih Prof. Samsul. Salam sehat Prof.
Ya,
okay, I think this is the questions for all of the presenters, I think, and then probably for the closing remarks for all the presenters here regarding to what the control measures that suitable to be implemented in Indonesia. As we know that the situation in Indonesia are quite different compared to the other countries such as in UK, in Australia, and in Japan and also in Thailand. What are the best ways for us? What is the best control strategies based on your experience that can be implemented in Indonesia? I think probably start from Dr. Wina or Dr. Donald. Or
I will start, since it's also my final remark. So I think one needs to be very mindful to have control measures that are suitable for your situation. And Dr. Hari, you've actually referred to that. Indonesia has very particular circumstances. And one of the important aspects, I think, is to try and engage with all the stakeholders when you are looking at control measures. And that will be the farmers, the all along the supply chain, the traders, the people that have animal markets, the people that slaughter, to try and have those people involved in the decisions that you make, because those are the ones. There was one question about how do we stop panic selling, for example. It means that one needs to engage people to understand what's going on. If you do decide to slaughter out, that there's sufficient compensation so that people will understand what the slaughtering is about, and that they will feel that they are getting sufficient funding back to continue with their livelihood. So it's one of the aspects that we're looking closer and closer in Australia as well, is to ensure that we bring along everyone that's involved in an outbreak like that, so that they understand what's going on, and to provide them with the support that's required. And they will then give their collaboration, which will ensure that the decisions that are jointly made will be successful. So just want to wish Indonesia all the best in this effort. And like Dr. King, I want to also just extend a helping hand where we can. We are very open to collaboration and would like to be as useful to you as possible.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wina. Thank you very much for your offer and also for your support. And Bapak Ibu semuanya, tadi yang ditekankan oleh Dr. Wina, ada keywords there that is for important strategy that can be implemented in Indonesia. Engagement, that is the key word, I think. And then bring along all the people that involved in the FMD, so we can understand what is going on. That is the keywords that we can't learn and also implement it to control the FMD in Indonesia. We can go just by ourselves, but we have to also engage other people, engage other institutions, and also there is offer from Dr. Wilna that she will be happy to support with our effort. And then next will be Dr. Professor Tamaki. Are you still with me? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
I think that the answer of the final question is very important. And I think that the important thing is which FMD status is a goal for Indonesia future.
Yep.
So I think that the control measure for the FMD is depend on the final status of the FMD in your country. So it depends on the your government or the political matter. It's because in Japan cases we follow the guideline or the government goal for the FMD status. So very easy to understand. So I believe that we succeeded to eradicate the FMD using that strategy. So I think that it depends on the government idea. That is my opinion. Thank you.
Oke, thank you Prof. Tamaki. Bapak Ibu semuanya, tadi ada keyword yang disampaikan oleh Prof. Tamaki. Selain tadi, the first one from Dr. Wilna is engagement. Bring all along the people that involve. Then the second keyword here is the government. Based on the government, based on the experience that Prof. Tamaki has during the 130 battle of FMD in Miyazaki, the government decisions, the government policy play a key crucial roles in the control of FMD that can be implemented in Indonesia. Thank you, Prof. Tamaki. Next will be Dr. Agus. Dr. Agus, you still with me?
Ya, Pak Ari.
Yeah.
Ya, sekarang kan I think the concern now is Idul Adha. Jadi memang one of the slide in my slide paling tidak contain by Idul Adha. Probably Pak Hari, the urgent thing now is pink, red, yellow, and green, and then we do something for movement control between red, yellow, and green. Begitu. Mungkin kalau yang di green bisa bebas. Idul Adha mungkin kalau di merah seperti apa tidak lalu lintasnya. Jadi ini kaitannya dengan lalu lintas. Mudah-mudahan seperti kata Pak Dr. Donald King tadi, kalau sel tappingnya selesai, saya membaca, I read that kepala sampel fresh sampelnya ke sana, nanti segera serta vaksin matching, kemudian vaksin. Jadi kombinasi antara vaksin, depopulasi, dan kontrol. Depopulasi tentu saja untuk daerah yang tadinya hijau baru ada satu, kenapa tidak begitu? Begitu. Nah, kalau sudah jadi segera kita membuat profiling atau mapping area itu. Dan menjawab tadi yang sama dengan yang kita kan sekarang concernnya kan ada jangka waktu pendek, jangka panjangnya adalah bebas. Nah, bikin bebas itu aspek kelihatannya the main thing dari policy analysis point of view perspective is that we need a leader. We need one leader. So we need leadership and to regain FMD Indonesia FMD free country. Begitu ya Pak Ari. Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih atas masukannya dan informasinya Pak Agus. Bapak Ibu semuanya, all the honorable participants, they are one, two, engagement to government, and the second will be implementations of the biosecurity, whether these are red, yellow, and green zone. And then Pak Agus mentions that we need the leaderships in the regain from the free FMD country as the free FMD country. So this particularly in the short term when we have to have the Idul Adha here, so we need to at least implement actually the biosecurity, movement control, depopulasi bila memerlukan, kemudian penerapan zona-zona red, yellow, and green. Baik, terima kasih Pak Agus. Next will be Dr. Kingkan. Dr. Kingkan, you with me now?
Okay, I'm here. I'm sorry for my lost connection.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, about my answer from the last last question. So in my case, so we're thinking about the biosafety and biosecurity. That means the department for Thailand, Department of Livestock have to collaborate with the private sector slaughter and register, and after that we can know everything. We can know every member, and we can help and arrangement and support each other about the biosafety and biosecurity. That means leading to control the FMD. For the big view of my opinion, I think the strategy, the policy, laboratory, the Department of Livestock, or also the farmer or private sector should be working together. And in my case, I'm from the laboratory side. I can get the good sample. That means I can get the good result, and the good result can be reflect to the strategy and policy to be the good control for FMD. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Kingkan, for the answer. Bapak Ibu semuanya tadi sudah 1, poin 1, poin 2, poin 3, and this from the laboratory point of view, ini sangat menarik sekali. Dr. Kingkan mentioned about the biosecurity, biosafety. So biosecurity, biosafety, and also collaboration, engagement in the controlling the FMD from the government, officer, livestock protections, farmers, private sectors. There is a keywords that really important, that good samples mean good result, and good result will be good control strategy. This is the keywords from Dr. Kingkan. Thank you, Dr. Kingkan, for the answer. And then last but not least, Dr. Donald.
Yeah, thank you for just a very brief opportunity just to summarize some of the key points. I mean, I don't have anything really to add to what's already been said. I think they make very important messages regarding the priorities for you now to control the disease in Indonesia. I recognize, and I think we all recognize, these are challenging times, and but like we've said, I think the policy and the approaches that are taken to control the disease need to be developed from within the country, but where there are opportunities, I think there's plenty of people outside of Indonesia that would be very happy to provide guidance and support. So, I mean, the main message from me, which I think we've already covered, is if you do need help, please let us know. It's not just the World Reference Laboratory; it's also, you know, colleagues, Dr. Vosloo, colleagues in other countries that have a lot of experience in some of these challenges, if you like, and say the door's open. Please let us know how we can help.
Okay.
Over.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Donald. Bapak Ibu semuanya, tadi apa yang disampaikan Dr. Donald ini memang luar biasa. Tadi sudah disampaikan di chat juga, ada Pak Kapus Fatma ini sudah mengirimkan, sudah menyiapkan sampelnya dan sudah mengirimkan. Nah, ini merupakan Pak Kapus ya, Pak Kapus sudah siap untuk dikirimkan ke BRIN for the further characterizations of the sample. Yang disampaikan Dr. Donald bahwasannya he will please let him know if we have a problem here regarding to the FFD control or regarding to the FMD. It's not just the World Reference Laboratory. He will keep open the door. I will knock your door, Dr. Donald. Is that okay? We will knock your door if you have a problem. Actually, we need to discuss further regarding to support and also regarding to the informations all about the FMD. Thank you very much, Dr. Donald. Bapak Ibu semua, all the honorable participants, all the honorable invited speakers. So I think this is really a great opportunity for us to gather together. This is one of our strategy actually to engage each other to what the experience that we learn from all the speakers regarding to the FMD control in Indonesia. This is just one step from us to help the government to control the FMD in Indonesia. I think all the summary from these discussions is already been mentioned by all the presenters, and we're really fortunate. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Wilna, Prof. Tamaki, and Dr. Kingkan, Dr. Agus, Dr. Donald, for your support and also for your willingness to be our speakers in this seminar. It's really, really great information for us, and it's really great knowledge for us to actually strengthen our collaborations and also to improve our capability in controlling the disease in Indonesia. Indeed, there are many other policies, there are many other factors that will influence our, there might be constraints as well, but this is the constraints that we will face. It will make us better, and we will learn a lot about the FMD control in Indonesia. And what you mentioned and what you presented give us knowledge how to do in the coming future, particularly in the short term with the coming adalah. Again, thank you very much for all the speakers. And also I would like to say thanks to everyone here that joined until this is like 5 p.m. here. And it's really great opportunity. I'm sure that the time is not enough for us with all the experts that gather here. The time not enough, but again, what Dr. Wilna, Prof. Tamaki, Dr. Kingkan, Dr. Donat say, and also Dr. Agat say that let them know if we have a problem. They open for the support and for the discussion if we got a problem. Baik, Bapak Ibu semuanya, saya yakin ini dengan luar biasa paparannya ini memang waktu tidak cukup, tetapi kita juga dibatasi waktu. Ini sudah molor setengah jam dari agenda yang kita buat sekitar 16.30. Tapi ini adalah luar biasa tadi yang disampaikan, poin-poin penting yang disampaikan. Itu sangat membantu kita dan mereka sangat open apabila kita membutuhkan bantuan. Kita harus berkolaborasi, bekerja bersama-sama. Again, thank you very much for all the participants, my seniors, my colleagues, my friends, and also my teachers ya, Bapak, Ibu, Profesor, semuanya senior-senior saya yang punya pengalaman hebat terkait dengan pengendalian PMK. Kita butuh supportnya, kita butuh kolaborasinya, butuh inputnya, sehingga kita bisa kontrol FMD di Indonesia. Again, I will give back the time to the MC. Thank you very much for joining us, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Harimurti Nuraji. And also thanks to Dr. Wilna Foslo, Profesor Tamaki Okabayashi DVM PhD, Dr. Agus Wiono DVM, Dr. Kingkan Bunsuyasio, Dr. Donald King for the sharing knowledge. Semoga ilmu yang telah di-sharing pada hari ini dapat bermanfaat bagi kita semua. Ladies and gentlemen, finally we get to the last session in this event, that is closing. Let's close this event by saying Hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. I do apologize for my mistake in presenting this event. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Bunga mawar, bunga lili, indah dipandang setiap hari. Kami pamit undur diri, sampai bertemu lagi. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu Profesor yang hadir di sini. Ada Bu Ed, ada Prof Bambang Ponco, Pak Profesor Nidong, terima kasih banyak. Kemudian Bapak Kapus juga di sini, ada Pak Kapus Petma, terima kasih sekali. And then Dr. Wilna, Dr. Tamaki, Prof. Tamaki, Dr. Donald, thank you very much. Dr. Kingkan, thank you very much for this. Bapak Ibu semuanya, terima kasih atas kehadirannya, luar biasa.